Chapter 266, Uncle Returned. After all, Red Leaf Valley Market just opened, and it's a great time to seize market share. Now that the kids are getting older, in a few years they will start cultivation one after another. And then the expenses will increase significantly. If we have a talisman shop, that would mean another stable source of income. Open a spiritual talisman shop. Lu Miaoge paused slightly when she heard this, then nodded and said, "That's doable. With your talisman-making skill, you're already capable of opening your own shop. However, about this matter, you need to give fourth grandma a heads up." Not long ago, Lu Chongqing had taken his talisman skills up a notch, demonstrating the prowess of a first-grade top-level talisman master. With such a level of skill, coupled with the Lu family supply channels, sustaining a talisman shop should be no issue. I've already mentioned this to Grandma and plan to talk to her about it more later. Alright, second elder is still waiting for me. Sister Miaoge, I'll head over now, Lu Chongqing said. He didn't linger to talk more with Lu Miaoge. After kissing his daughter and wife on their cheeks, he waved his hand and took off. Arriving at the entrance of Qingzhou Mountain, he boarded the second elder's spirit boat and set off for Nine Dragons Market. 2 days later, Lu Chongqing returned to Nine Dragons Market. As soon as he arrived home, Xia Zhiyue joyfully brought him good news. "Husband, I think I'm pregnant." 2 months ago, she had broken through from the 3rd level qi refinement to the 4th level. After Xia Zhiyue reached the 4th level qi refinement and expressed her willingness, Lu Chongqing didn't practice contraception anymore. But whether it was bad luck or due to her spirit-nurturing physique, it took so long for Xia Zhiyue to conceive. "You're pregnant, let me see." Lu Chongqing smiled when he heard the news, placing his head against Xia Zhiyue's lower abdomen. He immediately confirmed that she was indeed pregnant. "Zhiyue, you should rest and take good care of yourself at home from now on." Lu Chongqing gently stroked her smooth black hair and spoke softly. Even though Xia Zhiyue only had a 7th grade spiritual root, her spirit-nurturing physique made him quite expectant of their child. He could feel his own spiritual root was almost at the juncture between 6th and 5th grade. Having another child with a 6th grade spiritual root should promote his own from 6th to 5th grade. If they were to have a child with a 4th grade spiritual root like Xia Zhaoyang, that would be a direct leap to success. "Yes, of course," Xia Zhiyue nodded obediently. Thinking about the plan to open a spiritual talisman shop in Red Leaf Valley Market, Lu Chongqing went next door to Gao He's house and knocked on the door. "Uncle Lu." The door was opened by a 17 or 18-year-old girl with a delicate visage, dressed in a moon-white embroidered garment. It was Gao He's daughter, Gao Xiaoya. The former little Lolita had grown into an elegant young lady. "Xiaoya, is your dad at home?" Lu Chongqing asked. "He's not, Uncle Lu." "Is there something you need from my father?" Gao Xiaoya asked, tilting her head. "It's nothing urgent. Let him know when he gets back that I have something to discuss with him," Lu Chongqing said with a smile. "Alright, Uncle Lu. Won't you come in for a cup of tea?" Gao Xiaoya asked politely. "No, I have other matters to attend to," Lu Chongqing declined and waved his hand. Gao He only returned home after nightfall. As soon as he got home, he came to inquire about Lu Changsheng's business. "Brother Gao, you must have heard of Red Leaf Valley Market, haven't you?" Lu Chongqing asked. "Of course, it's the marketplace established by your Lu family of Qingzhou Mountain, the Yu family from Bai Lake Mountain, the Wugong Ridge Xing family, and the 100 Birds Lake Bai family," Gao He responded, nodding his head. As a talisman master, he also had his own information channels. Therefore, he was aware of the annihilation of Red Leaf Valley and the subsequent transformation into a marketplace by the 4 major families. "I am planning to open a talisman shop in Red Leaf Valley Market and wanted to ask if you're interested in coming over as the resident talisman master," Lu Chongqing got straight to the point. Although he intended to open a spiritual talisman shop in Red Leaf Valley, having managed a talisman shop in Nine Dragons Market for so many years, he knew that it was difficult to run a shop alone. Especially in the initial stages, there are many tasks that require attention. He alone would definitely be overwhelmed. So, he would undoubtedly need to hire help. Having known Gao He for many years, Lu Chongqing was aware that aside from his occasional indulgences and pleasures, his character was reliable. A reliable person indeed. So Lu Chongqing thought of hiring Gao He to manage the shop for him. The position of the resident talisman master? Gao He heard this and didn't immediately answer, showing a contemplative expression. He was content with living a stable life. With no ambitious aspirations, he only wished to raise his daughter well and live out his life in peace. Currently a resident talisman master at a spiritual talisman shop in Nine Dragons Market, his life was very stable. Heading to Red Leaf Valley Market would surely be less secure than here. If you are willing, Brother Gao, you only need to manage the shop, create some talismans, and occasionally mentor apprentices. I will mostly stay out of the shop's affairs. In terms of salary, it will be increased by 50% based on your current rate, and additionally, in Red Leaf Valley Market, I have a second-order cave mansion with a spirit vein, which I can rent to you at a base price. This will also greatly improve your and Zhaoya's cultivation, Lu Chongqing continued. Since he was looking to recruit someone, he had to offer a price that was enticing enough, otherwise, why would someone agree to work for him? With you putting it this way, Brother Lu, I don't have any reason to refuse, Gao He said with a beaming smile that made his face even more prosperous. Just the 50% increase in salary was tempting to him. Adding on the second-order cave mansion, he had no reason to refuse at all. For ordinary loose cultivators, aside from joining a force, they generally had no means of securing a second-order mansion. Chapter 267, Uncle returned. Alright, let's settle it like this. The Red Leaf Valley Market will be open in a few more months, and they'll notify Gao He then. Seeing the other party agree, Lu Chongqing also nodded. Okay, no problem. Gao He nodded in agreement. Gao He, how are you doing with superior grade talismans now? Lu Chongqing inquired. Gao He had also become a superior grade talisman master. But the specifics, he wasn't too clear on. Although he had chatted with Gao He about talismans over the years, it was not exactly frequent. I have about a 50% success rate with golden light barrier talismans. As for nectar talismans, only a 30% success rate, and for escape talismans, merely 10%. Gao He shook his head and sighed. Hearing this, Lu Chongqing immediately spoke out, discussing and offering guidance to Gao He about talismans. After all, the man was considered his own family's resident talisman master. So, spending some time guiding him was not a big deal. Additionally, by doing this, it allowed Gao He to serve him better. 3 months flew by in a blink. During this time, the fourth elder also learned of Lu Changsheng's intention to open a talisman shop in Red Leaf Valley. She didn't say much about it, but instead supported Lu Changsheng's idea. After all, with his talisman-making skill, it would indeed be a pity to rent out the shop. She soon arranged for another talisman master to preside over the spiritual talisman shop in Nine Dragons Market. This allowed Lu Chongqing to stop going there and return to Qingzhou Mountain to rest. Qingzhou Valley, inside the practice room. Lu Chongqing sat cross-legged with hands positioned towards the heavens, cultivating. 7 sharp sword chi swirled around him gracefully, making his skin feel cold. Huff. It's almost 3 to 4 months away from the 9th level energy refinement. Lu Chongqing exhaled lightly, concluding today's routine cultivation. He could clearly feel that his spiritual power was likely to reach perfection in a few months, at which point he could challenge the 9th level energy refinement. For him, advancing from the 8th to the 9th level was not an issue, the process was as natural as the flow of water. Leaving the practice room, Lu Chongqing went to his study to draw talismans as usual. After creating one supreme talisman and two superior-grade talismans, Lu Chongqing went to the courtyard to spend time with his wives and children. Lu Qingshan and Lu Qingzhu could now walk. Lu Qingshan, while possessing a spiritual body, seemed no different from any normal child. If anything, he was just more lively and active. This made Lu Chongqing secretly wonder if his son would inherit his mother's personality as he grew up. If he were to become like the second miss in temperament, he would probably bring a fair amount of trouble for his father. At that moment, Lu Chongqing received a message. The Red Leaf Valley Market was going to open in 10 days. 10 days. Upon hearing this message, Lu Chongqing nodded slightly. He sent letters to inform Hong Yi and Gao He about the news. He planned to go there once the Red Leaf Market opened. Although the marketplace would not attract many cultivators when it just opened, and it would need some time before the traffic picked up, opening a shop required advance arrangement and preparation. Upon a solemn, hallowed, and eerie high platform. The platform was surrounded by golden flagpoles. The black flags flying from the poles were embroidered with various vivid and lifelike demons. Now, the flags flapped loudly, turning into billowing demonic chi, which caused visions of terrifying demons to emerge. At that moment, the white-haired young man sitting cross-legged on the platform suddenly opened his stunning eyes. They were dark and profound, with a crescent lotus pattern surfacing at his brow. The crescent lotus was blood-red, exuding an evil charm, and wrapped him in a powerful and boundless aura, like a ferocious tiger or dragon. Ketsukadu, Sami, Prajnaparamita Sami, Ketsukadu Prajnaparamita Sami, the white-haired young man abruptly voiced a deep and mysterious chant. The low resonating sound summoned a blood-colored figure with 3 heads and 6 arms behind him to slowly take shape. This blood-colored figure also seemed to chant, causing the voice to grow increasingly eerie and tremendous. It sounded as if countless voices blended together, causing the platform to tremble continuously as the flag's demon submitted to the blood figure with 3 heads and 6 arms. Not bad, befitting my disciple, you have not disappointed me. As he spoke, a youth in a black robe, with aged eyes and a sinisterly handsome face, appeared on the platform. He looked down at the white-haired young man, smiling satisfactorily as he clapped his hands. You once promised me that if I were to establish the Demon Dao Foundation, you would let me return once. Chu Chang'e looked toward the youth before him with a detached expression, his voice somewhat husky. As your master, I will not break my promise. The black-robed youth laughed softly, then called out, Hey Chio. After a short while, a surge of chi that resembled a black serpent came rolling in. It transformed into a muscular man in black armor, his body covered in black demonic patterns, his features deep with evil intent. Hei Chio pays his respects to the ancestor master. The bald man's demonic pattern seemed to move like little serpents, imposing a terrifying sensation. However, upon seeing the black-robed youth, he knelt down with a devout salute as if on a pilgrimage. You will accompany the young master to Jiang country. The black-robed youth stated indifferently. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure gradually faded away into nothingness. Young master, when do you plan to embark for Jiang country? The bald man, seeing the youth vanish, immediately turned to Chu Chang'e on the platform, an ingratiating smile spreading across his face. At odds with his ghastly appearance, the smile created a jarring contrast. Jiang country. Chu Chang'e paused slightly, his eyes flickering with an unusual light. His husky voice then declared, Now. Chapter 268, Advanced Draw, Heavenly Spiritual Treasure. _ 10 days later. Red Leaf Valley Market. After its reconstruction into a marketplace, Red Leaf Valley still cultivated its mountains of red leaves and spiritual fields. Because the market had just opened, it was quite desolate. There were only people from the 4 major families and a few other forces. Lu Chongqing and Lu Miaoge strolled through the market, familiarizing themselves with the situation. Although the mountains were still covered with red leaves, the interior layout had been reorganized, completely different from its original appearance. The planned layout bore some resemblance to the Nine Dragons market. It was divided into 4 areas, east, west, south, and north, designated for residential and commercial use, respectively. Shops used by the major families were basically located in the best spots within the commercial area. The location of Lu Changsheng's shop wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either. On the commercial street. When purchasing the shop from Hong Yi, Lu Chongqing had also become aware of its price. It was worth roughly 3,000 spirit stones. In a few years, maybe even a few decades, once the market's foot traffic increased, its value could potentially rise substantially. As for Hong Yi's shop, its location was quite ordinary. It was situated on a rather secluded street. One reason was that only shops at this level were still available for external sale. Another was that the Rui Marquis mansion had limited financial resources. They could at most bring out 1,800 spirit stones. While wandering with Lu Miaoge, Lu Chongqing received a transmission from Gao He. "Sister Miaoge, I have something to take care of, I need to go over there," Lu Chongqing said to Lu Miaoge. "Emichim, go ahead." Lu Miaoge replied, her white dress and gentle demeanor giving her an air of serenity. Suddenly, Lu Chongqing went to meet Gao He at the market entrance and brought him to his own shop. This shop wasn't big, barely 200 square meters in size, with a 3-story structure. "Brother Gao, this shop will be in your care from now on," Lu Chongqing said to Gao He. "For now, I can supply 3 supreme talismans and some superior grade talismans every month." As for stock and inventory, Lu Chongqing explained the shop's essentials to Gao He. Having spent many years in the Nine Dragons market, his experiences hadn't been in vain. He was quite familiar with the operations of a spirit talisman shop. "Brother Lu, this shop isn't owned by the Lu family, it's yours?" Gao He asked in astonishment after hearing Lu Changsheng's words. He had originally thought that Lu Chongqing invited him to Red Leaf Valley Market to act as the resident talisman master on behalf of the Lu family of Qingzhou Mountain. To his surprise, Lu Chongqing had opened his own shop. This left him both astonished and envious. Many Lu's cultivators spend their entire lives in the cultivation world and still may not be able to afford a residence in a marketplace. Most can only choose to return to the secular world to settle down. Even for him, an advanced-level talisman master, buying property in a larger market wasn't easy. A shop like Lu Changsheng's could support 3 generations if Red Leaf Market didn't run into trouble, and that wasn't an exaggeration. "Ha, that's right, the Lu family also has a shop here," Lu Chongqing chuckled. "However, this shop isn't owned by the Lus, it's my personal business. Therefore, I won't have much time to manage it, which is why I requested your assistance," he continued, not hiding the truth. He planned to spend his time cultivating in Qingzhou Mountain like the 4th elder, accompanying his wife and children. After completing the talisman-making tasks for the Lu family each month and supplying the spiritual talisman shop, he would come to check on the shop and see Lu Miaoge. "All right, rest assured, boss," Gao He said without further questions, giving a respectful bow. After taking a look at the shop and glancing at Lu Chongqing, he added, "But this shop needs a name. Why don't you choose one, boss? Since it sells talismans, let's just call it Peace Talisman Hall," Lu Chongqing suggested after some thought, coming up with a rather uninspired name. Gao He's mouth twitched slightly. Such shop names were basically cliché. But that's how it was for most shops, except for some major families and powers. They could only build a reputation by slowly accumulating good reviews and growing the business. Subsequently, Gao He discussed the initial preparations for the spirit talisman shop with Lu Chongqing. Having been briefed on this by Lu Chongqing, he had made ready preparations. Lu Chongqing knew that Gao He had put in the effort when he heard this. He had even thought that if it didn't work out, he could ask the Lu family for support. After all, it would be foolish not to use resources that were readily available. Suddenly, Lu Chongqing also discussed the second-order cave mansion with Gao He. He had seen the mansion. It wasn't big, just 100 square meters. But for rent, it could fetch 80 to 90 spirit stones a year. Once the foot traffic increased, he estimated it could be rented out for 100 spirit stones. Lu Chongqing then rented it to Gao He for a base price of 80 spirit stones per year. Thank you, boss. Gao He gratefully accepted the offer. He planned to clear a path in the Nine Dragons market and, at the same time, bring over his daughter, Gao Xiaoya. After chatting for a while, Lu Chongqing left and went to the Lu family's spiritual talisman shop. This shop's layout and decorations were similar to those in the Nine Dragons market's Lu family spiritual talisman shop, only larger. Chongqing, you finished your business. Lu Miaoge came forward as soon as she knew Lu Chongqing had arrived. Apart from being at home, she still maintained a sense of grace and inaccessibility when outside. Yes, I've finished, Lu Chongqing said, nodding with a smile. He shared the details of his discussion with Gao He with Lu Miaoge. This is what being husband and wife was like. It wasn't every day that there were fresh and interesting stories to share. Often, much of the time was spent talking about the little things happening around them. The night deepened. Red Leaf Valley was already quiet, now enveloped in silence. Apart from the guards tasked with patrolling, most had entered the realm of dreams. On the third floor of the Lu family's spiritual talisman shop. Inside the simple bedroom, the bed's curtains hung down. The candlelight flickered gently, as if a full moon had sunk into the water, waves gently lapping. After the deed. Sister Miaoge, how long do you need to break through to the 9th level of energy refinement? Chapter 269, Advanced Draw, Heavenly Spiritual Treasure. Lu Chongqing embraced the warm, soft jade and asked softly, due to the previous assassination attempt and because of her pregnancy and childbirth, Lu Miaoge had only broken through to the 8th level of energy refinement 3 months ago. It should take about 5 or 6 years. Lu Miaoge was still immersed in the afterglow of her cultivation session, her cheeks flushed with a beauty that seemed beyond compare. 5 to 6 years, Lu Chongqing heard this and nodded slightly. He understood that at Lu Miaoge's current pace of cultivation, waiting for her to reach perfection in energy refinement and then to attempt foundation establishment would likely take more than a decade. In more than 10 years, by then, maybe I could get a genuine foundation establishment elixir. Moreover, after I reach foundation establishment, I can consider passing on the split sword technique, Lu Chongqing thought to himself. Now that Lu Miaoge was his wife, the mother of his children, he naturally paid more attention to her cultivation and foundation establishment. It's nothing, I was just asking. I want to help you with your cultivation, to reach foundation establishment sooner, Lu Chongqing whispered to the beauty before him. Then, capturing her tender lips, they continued their cultivation. Among all his wives and concubines, only Lu Miaoge, who was also at the 8th level of energy refinement, produced the best results when dual cultivating with him. A single session of dual cultivation was almost equivalent to half a month of solitary cultivation. Lu Miaoge's cheeks were flushed, her brows gently curved, her eyes gleaming like water, her teeth biting down on her cherry lips. After spending half a month with Lu Miaoge in Red Leaf Valley Market, Lu Chongqing returned to Qingzhou Mountain. The distance between Red Leaf Valley and Qingzhou Mountain made his travels much more convenient. On the third day after returning to Qingzhou Mountain, the maid Jiang Luiyue gave birth to a child. This child did not possess a spiritual root, but at the moment of the child's birth, a system prompt arrived as expected. Congratulations, host, the number of your offspring has reached 100, you are awarded 1 advanced lottery draw, advanced lottery. Lu Chongqing raised his eyebrows upon hearing this. Previously, when he had 50 children, he received a designated draw, which allowed him to choose any category for the draw. He hadn't expected that reaching 100 children would warrant an advanced lottery draw. If the regular lottery is this powerful, won't the advanced lottery skyrocket? At this moment, Lu Chongqing couldn't help but feel excited and anticipatory. He immediately rushed to his study to start the lottery draw. System, I want to draw the lottery. Lu Chongqing thought to himself. Instantly, a deep red virtual lottery wheel appeared. It was different from the previous lottery wheels. This wheel had only 4 sections: cultivation technique classics, elixirs, heaven and earth treasures, and spiritual pet treasures. The regular lottery can draw orthodox level cultivation techniques. Could the cultivation technique classics drawn from the advanced lottery be above the orthodox level? And if the pets from the regular lottery are heavenly grade bloodline pets, wouldn't the advanced lottery possibly give true spirit beast cubs? Lu Chongqing looked at the advanced lottery wheel in front of him and couldn't help but look forward to it. That feeling of anxious anticipation for the lottery had arisen again. Curious about what reward he would receive this time. System, draw the lottery. Lu Chongqing didn't think too much, took a deep breath, and slowly exhaled. With a mental shift, the brilliant gold light appeared on the advanced lottery wheel and began to spin rapidly. After 5 seconds, the light gradually slowed. Finally, with Lu Chongqing's heart pounding, the gold light settled on the spiritual pet treasure section. Ding! Congratulations, host, for obtaining a heavenly spiritual treasure, 9 treasure jade rui. The reward has been distributed to the system space. The host can check it at any time. A green rui image, inlaid with what looked like 9 stars, emerged from the lottery wheel accompanied by a system notification tone. Heavenly spiritual treasure. 9 treasure jade rui. Lu Chongqing, seeing the reward he obtained, was immediately delighted. He hadn't imagined that he would draw a heavenly spiritual treasure. The treasures used by cultivators are categorized from low to high as magic artifact, spiritual artifact, magical treasure, spiritual treasure, and heavenly spiritual treasure. Heavenly spiritual treasure, the supreme treasure that only nascent divine cultivators could wield and use. It was rumored that treasures of this level had their own artifact spirits, with autonomous consciousness and the ability to think. Unexpectedly, through the advanced lottery, he had drawn a treasure of this level. If a heavenly spiritual treasure has an artifact spirit, it should automatically bond with its master just like a pet does. I wonder if the grand old artifact spirit can give me a boost, Lu Chongqing thought hopefully to himself. Then he turned his attention to the heavenly spiritual treasure in the system space. Spiritual treasure, 9 treasure jade rui, grade, heavenly spiritual treasure, description. Before the demise of the divine Lord of 9 heavens, he gathered the essence of all heavenly stars, infused it into the myriad spirits jade, and finally refined it with his 9 great divine abilities. It contains 9 great divine abilities, mysterious and unfathomable, and possesses immense power. Only a person with great magical power can activate it, so the grade is just heavenly spiritual treasure, without detailed grades. Lu Chongqing looked at the information of the treasure and felt surprised. This made him recall something he read in an ancient tome. A heavenly spiritual treasure is fundamentally superior to even the finest of the supreme spiritual treasures. Therefore, it is beyond the categorizations of low, middle, high, and supreme. Regardless of whether it's categorized or not, the 4 words heavenly spiritual treasure are enough. Lu Chongqing didn't dwell too much on this point. With a mental spirit, he extracted the heavenly spiritual treasure from the system space. Immediately, a beautifully crafted, glossy jade rui about the size of a baby's arm appeared. The glossy jade rui shimmered with light, glimmering like galaxies flowing, beauty beyond words. 9 stars of crimson, blood red, golden yellow, sky blue, deep blue, purple, black, dark black, and pure white were inlaid on it, so exquisite that they seemed to emit their own profound mysteries. Chapter 268, Advanced Draw, Heavenly Spiritual Treasure. HM. No artifact spirit. Having just extracted the 9 treasure jade rui, Lu Chongqing had already gleaned a basic understanding of the information about this high-level spiritual treasure. This high-level spiritual treasure was indeed formidable. The 9 treasure Jade Rui contained 9 great divine abilities, known as the 9 treasures. The first treasure enhanced one's physical strength. The second treasure amplified mana and divine skills. The third treasure boosted the soul and divine sense. The fourth treasure increased speed, enabling one to ride the wind with incredible swiftness. The fifth treasure held healing divine light, repairing the physical body and treating the primordial spirit. The sixth treasure was protective divine light, shielding one from all methods of attack with its divine light. The seventh treasure was sealing divine light, capable of sealing another's mana or one's own aura. The eighth treasure was unsealing divine light, able to break through all sorts of formations and restrictions with a sweep of its light. The ninth treasure was 9-colored disaster light, capable of obliterating everything on its path. As for the first 4 enhancements like vigor, mana, soul, and speed, they could be amplified up to 10 times. While the fifth treasure's healing power could not bring the dead back to life, as long as there was a breath of life, it could generally save and prolong one's life. It could even consume one's origin source to instantly recover from all injuries. With just these effects, the 9 treasure Jade Rui could be considered a truly precious treasure. Not to mention the latter 4 divine lights, each an unparalleled divine skill. However, this high-level spiritual treasure did not possess an artifact spirit, as Lu Chongqing had imagined. According to the system introduction, this high-level spiritual treasure was at the stage where it had just been refined by the God of the 9 heavens, still yet to pass through the heavenly tribulation and nourish an artifact spirit to form an autonomous consciousness. If one had to categorize it, it could only be considered as an almost high-level spiritual treasure. Without an artifact spirit, this high-level spiritual treasure is just a powerful magical treasure to me, Lu Chongqing shook his head and said. It was not too disappointing for him. After all, the system's rewards were too advanced for him at this point, incapable of being transformed into strength quickly. This 9 treasure Jade Rui was just even more advanced. To him, its essence was about the same as the Black Dragon magical bead. Luckily, I have the 100 refinements treasure body art, otherwise, having such a heavy treasure, I could only watch and let it gather dust. Lu Chongqing let out a breath. He possessed the 100 refinements treasure body art. With this art, he could utilize any magical treasure or spiritual treasure for cultivation, incorporating them into his body to enhance the speed of his 100 refinements treasure body art's cultivation. With the aid of the middle-grade Black Dragon magical bead, his treasure body technique advanced with incredible speed. In about another year, he could break through to the 3rd level. If he refined a high-level spiritual treasure into his body, his 100 refinements treasure body art's cultivation speed would likely skyrocket. Moreover, once the treasure body technique is cultivated to the 5th level, the treasure bone technique can melt the magical treasure into a life-bound treasure bone. Once a life-bound treasure bone is formed, one can wield the magical treasure's divine effects without the need for the Black Dragon magical bead's origin nurturing, unlike talisman treasures that have limited power and need to be nurtured again after each use. If I were to melt this 9 treasure Jade Rui into a life-bound treasure bone, then I'd command the 9 great divine abilities of the 9 treasure Jade Rui. At this moment, Lu Chongqing murmured in his heart, thinking about the treasure bone technique in the 100 refinements treasure body art. The current treasure bone technique could only consume a magical treasure's origin to nurture the bones, thereby exerting part of the magical treasure's power, but each time the power was drained, it would need to be nurtured again. But once the 100 refinements treasure body art was cultivated to the 5th level, and the physical body comparable to a spiritual artifact, he could then melt a magical treasure or spiritual treasure with the skull, sternum, spine, and limbs, the 7 treasure bones, into a life-bound treasure bone. Once the life-bound treasure bone was formed, the magical treasure and treasure bone would meld into one. From then on, the magical treasure's divine effects would become the cultivator's life-bound divine abilities, innate divine abilities. With the system by his side, ordinary magical treasures, which had average power and limited potential, Lu Chongqing was not too willing to melt them into life-bound treasure bones. Because once a magical treasure is cultivated into a life-bound treasure bone, that particular life-bound treasure bone can no longer assist in cultivation, nor can it refine other magical treasures into the body. Therefore, one must be extremely cautious with the 7 life-bound treasure bones of the treasure body technique. Otherwise, if one casually melds 7 life-bound treasure bones, and can no longer refine magical treasures to assist in cultivation in the future, then the 100 refinements treasure body technique would become practically useless for Lu Chongqing. But this 9 treasure jade rui was different. Its grade was that of a high-level spiritual treasure, with an extremely high potential, and contained 9 great divine abilities. Once he mastered these 9 divine abilities, his strength would receive a comprehensive boost. It's absolutely worth melting it into a life-bound treasure bone. However, my 100 refinements treasure body art is only at the 2nd level. Even with the help of magical treasures for cultivation, it will take a long time to break through to the 5th level. Lu Chongqing shook his head and exhaled a long breath, not thinking about such long-term matters. Soon after, he sat cross-legged, wanting to see how long it would take for the 100 refinements treasure body art to refine this high-level spiritual treasure. Even the creators of this cultivation technique from 100 Creation Mountain had never tried to use the Qi refinement realm to refine a high-level spiritual treasure. Having magical treasures refined into the body at the Qi refinement realm, which could then be used to assist in cultivation, was already remarkable. How could a high-level spiritual treasure possibly be used for such refinement? In Zhoushan Mansion City, Chu Chang'e walked through the city. He was dressed in a black wide-sleeved robe, his normally white hair had been dyed black and was held up with a hairpin. With a stern face that, besides seeming quiet and reticent, didn't appear much different from an ordinary person. But he was followed by a tall and muscular bald man in black attire. The bald man radiated a compelling majesty, inspiring fear and trembling in those who looked upon him, deterring anyone from getting too close. Chu Chang'e stopped walking, staring at the dazzling facade of the Chu residence in front of him, taken aback and showing a look of astonishment. Chapter 269, Advanced Draw, Heavenly Spiritual Treasure. _4 He clearly remembered that the last time he returned home, his house was desolate and dilapidated, overgrown with weeds. How had it now returned to the appearance he remembered in his memories? Could it be, the scene I saw before, was it all an illusion? In fact, my parents, they might not be dead. Chu Chang's heart skipped a beat. The heart that had long been deadened was now roiling with emotion, and tears almost spilled out. But he didn't step forward to knock on the door. With his foundation establishment cultivation, he was able to clearly sense that within the residence, there was only one elderly person. There were no other signs of life. So he knew that the derelict state of the Chu residence he had seen before was not any illusion. The residence before his eyes must have been rebuilt for some reason. At this moment, the elder inside the Chu residence, seeing Chu Chang'e standing at the door, couldn't help but ask, "Young sir, do you need something?" "I thought the Chu residence had been raided by bandits." After a moment of silence, Chu Chang'e replied with a somewhat hoarse voice. "Yes, the Chu family, I don't know what sins we had committed. 10 years ago we were raided by bandits, and the courtyard was left desolate, but then last year." The elder spoke with a hint of melancholy. The old man was of an advanced age, rambling on, but he helped Chu Chang'e understand the situation. He learned that a man and a woman had come to erect a tombstone for his parents and had renovated the residence. Jinjin is still alive. Chu Chang'e immediately knew that the woman the elder spoke of was his sister, Chu Jinjin. Knowing that his sister was still alive, his body couldn't help but tremble. But he soon calmed down again, nodded, and left with the bald man. They had not gone far before the two transformed into an escape light, concealing their forms and entering the courtyard of the Chu residence. Looking at the courtyard, which closely resembled the one from his past yet lacked the vibrancy of life, Chu Chang'e seemed somewhat bewildered as he walked around. Then, in the back courtyard, he saw the tombstones and spirit hall. Father, Chu Qingsong, Mother Zhao's tomb. Son-in-law, Lu Chongxing, daughter Chu Zhenjin in tribute. Zhenjin is married. Chu Chang'e looked at the tombstone before him. The image of his sister, Chu Zhenjin, as he remembered her, surfaced in his mind. Knowing that his sister was still alive and now married, he felt joy and relief but also a complex mix of emotions. Time really does fly. It's good that she's married. With Zhenjin's temperament, it would be difficult for her to be alone. I wonder how Zhenjin is doing these days. Chu Chang'e stared at the tombstone before him, lost in thought, his expression extremely complex. Young master, if you have living relatives you wish to see, I have a secret technique that can trace them through your bloodline, said the man in black armor next to him, attempting to please him. His obsequious demeanor instantly swept away any semblance of his authoritative presence. Forget it, given my current situation, it's better not to disturb her life, Chu Chang'e said, gently shaking his head. He was acutely aware that he had embarked on a perilous path, one far different from that of ordinary people. If he were to visit his sister, it might disrupt her life. Moreover, he couldn't stay for long on this visit back home. Chu Chang'e then knelt before the tombstone, went to the spirit hall, and offered incense and tribute. Still, I should go have a look, as long as I don't disturb his life, he sighed as he prepared to leave the Chu residence to investigate the true events of the Chu family's past. He still couldn't let go of his sister in his heart. He decided to check on how his sister Zhenjin was doing these days. What should I do? Chu Chang'e asked, looking toward the man in black armor beside him. Young master, you only need to give me a drop of your blood, and I can use it to trace the bloodline and perform the secret technique, the man in black armor said. Upon hearing this, Chu Chang'e promptly forced out a drop of bright, clear, scarlet blood. Although in the demon path, there were many techniques that used another's blood to perform spells, even to attack stealthily. But he harbored no such worries. Knowing that his master had certain intentions for him, his life was no longer in his own hands. The man in black armor took the blood and formed hand gestures, turning the blood into a miniature, dark red snake. Young master, this blood-guiding snake will automatically seek out those related to you by blood, said the man in black armor. Let's go, Chu Chang'e said indifferently, nodding his head as he watched the blood-guiding snake, and he disappeared with the man in black armor from the courtyard. 7 days later. Qingzhou Mountain. Zhenjin has also stepped onto the path of cultivation. Chu Chang'e and the man in black armor followed the blood-colored snake and arrived outside Qingzhou Mountain. He immediately discerned that Qingzhou Mountain was a cultivation family's residence. He had not expected that his sister would come to the residence of a cultivation family and walk the path of a cultivator. Young master, I sense just now that this is but a small family, inside is only one foundation establishment cultivator, said the man in black armor. Young master, would you like to enter directly or sneak in? He asked, his voice still carrying a fawning tone. Chapter 270, Breakthrough in Cultivation Level, Spiritual Root Promotion. _1 Chu Chang'e and the man in black armor walked through Qingzhou Mountain. The two seemed invisible, unperceived by the Lu family's watching disciples. Following the blood-guiding snake, Chu Chang'e arrived at White Deer Mountain Villa. He immediately saw a group of the Lu family's people, picking up their children from school. From the crowd, he instantly spotted a woman in her 20s, with a gentle and beautiful face, wearing a pink and white dress. The woman was holding a child, walking alongside a man in his 20s wearing a blue robe. There were also 8 or 9 children following them, chatting and laughing. Even though it had been 10 years since they last met, Chu Chang'e recognized at a glance that this woman in the pink and white dress, with her gentle and dazzling face, was his own sister, Chu Zhenjin. Zhenjin. He called out in his heart. but he didn't make a sound, fearing to disturb her peace. Who would have thought, the once little girl has now become a mother? Chu Chang'e watched Chu Zhenjin holding a child, chatting and laughing with the man, and talking gently with the children nearby, his deep, silent eyes revealing a mix of happiness, relief, and heaviness, as well as timidity and confusion. He could tell that his sister was doing well here. Not only did her face carry a joyful and blissful expression, but she had also set foot on the path of cultivation. However, her cultivation level was somewhat low, only at the 4th level energy refinement. Then, his gaze shifted to Lu Chongqing beside her. He knew this must be his brother-in-law. As for his first impression of his brother-in-law, he found him quite favorable. Firstly because he erected a monument for their parents and renovated the Chu residence. Furthermore, his appearance was handsome, matching his sister well. While speaking with his sister and the children, his demeanor was gentle, showing the attitude of a husband and father. He took a glance at Lu Changsheng's cultivation level. He found that he couldn't discern Lu Changsheng's cultivation level at all. He did not care much about this. After all, the cultivation world had many techniques and treasures to conceal one's cultivation level and spiritual power. Having such a treasure indicated that his brother-in-law must hold a decent status and identity within the family. He didn't use any spells to probe either. Lest Lu Chongqing sense his presence. Are all these children's engines? Chu Chang'e turned his gaze toward the groups of children beside the couple, his heart skipping a beat. The children were mostly 5 or 6 years old, the oldest no more than 8 or 9. He remembered that it had only been a total of 10 years since he left home. In 10 years, his sister couldn't possibly have so many children, could she? The next moment, he looked carefully. He could feel a blood connection only with the infant Chu Zhenjin was holding, as well as with an 8 or 9-year-old boy and a 6 or 7-year-old girl, which made him feel a kinship as their uncle. He knew only these 3 were his sister's children. Seeing there were only 3, he nodded slightly. If she had given birth to 10 children in 10 years, he feared he might have had thoughts of drawing a sword. Only this child has a spiritual root, huh? Chu Chang's eyes fell on the 3 children to whom he felt related by blood, focusing on Lu Chuanjin. Chu Zhenjin had given birth to 4 children. Among them, the first child, Lu Chuanjin, and the third child, Lu Caizhen, possessed a spiritual root. However, Lu Caizhen was still not of schooling age and was playing at home. I wonder what kind of spiritual root this child has. Chu Chang'e thought to himself. Throughout these years, although he had been constantly forced to cultivate in the darkness, he had also acquired a general understanding of the cultivation world. He knew that compared to the secular world, the cultivation world was even more brutal. A stark world of survival of the fittest, selection of the superior and elimination of the inferior. If his nephew's spiritual root was mediocre, he would face many hardships when he began cultivating as he grew up. Sigh. Chu Chang'e sighed. His heart had become numb and silent over the years. But at that moment, he couldn't help feeling sentimental. He was not only worried about his sister's life but also, by extension, concerned about his nephew's situation. He shook his head slightly, choosing not to dwell further on these thoughts. Aware of his current situation, how could he afford to care about others? Watching Chu Zhenjin and others chat and laugh as they gradually moved away, he closed his eyes. Let's go. Chu Chang'e reopened his eyes, determination shining within them. He turned and walked toward the exit of Qingzhou Mountain. Now that he had seen his sister and knew she was living well, he felt at ease. He was acutely aware of his current circumstances. If he had too much contact with his sister, he would only bring harm upon her. What he needed to do now was to live well, strive to survive, and improve himself. Until he possessed the strength to control his own destiny. No matter how dangerous the future might be, whether it was fortune or calamity, this was his only choice, his only path. Just as his master had said. In this world, only one's own strength is eternal. A breeze blew through, rustling the bamboo, causing a sense of utmost comfort and peace. Chu Zhenjin, who was talking to Lu Chongqing, seemed to sense something. She suddenly turned her head, looking in the direction of Chu Changge. But there was nothing there. Zhenjin, what's the matter? Lu Chongqing asked Chu Zhenjin. Nothing. Chu Zhenjin gently shook her head, dismissing the indistinct feeling. Lu Chongqing was unaware of Chu Changge's visit. His daily life continued as usual, cultivating, making talismans, and spending time with his wife and children. There was just one more thing he did, refining the 9-treasured jade ruby. Indeed, the 9-treasured jade ruby, a heaven-reaching spiritual treasure, proved to be 100 times harder to refine than the black dragon magical bead had been. Even with the profound origin bead in his possession, and spending 1 or 2 hours a day on its refinement, it would probably take 3 to 5 years. Although this period was long, he was very much looking forward to the effects of fully refining the 9-treasured jade ruby and integrating it into his body. Chapter 271, Breakthrough in Cultivation Level, Spiritual Root Promotion. Before one realized, 2 months had gone by. Lu Chongqing, I think I'm pregnant again. That day, Lu Miaohuan ran over and said to Lu Chongqing. Initially, she had said she would only have 1 child, yet now, barely a year after the first child's birth, she was pregnant again. She revealed a look of helplessness and frustration. Did you forget to force it out using your spiritual power? Lu Chongqing was slightly taken aback upon hearing the words of the second mistress, before immediately responding. Even if not for the purpose of having children, the two of them often cultivated together. In such cases, if he did not control himself and Lu Miaohuan forgot to force it out, there was a not-so-small chance of getting pregnant. What should I do then? Lu Miaohuan pouted her red lips, and spoke somewhat innocently. If you're pregnant, then let's have it. This will be the last one, Lu Chongqing said softly, gently stroking her head with a tender expression. Emishim. Lu Miaohuan nodded heavily. After spending some quality time accompanying the second mistress, Lu Chongqing saw that it was already the end of the month. He then left the house and rode the Iron Feather Eagle to the Red Leaf Valley market. By now, Red Leaf Valley had been open for over 3 months. Yet, the popularity was still average, and the streets looked desolate. In such a desolate state, the business of his Peace Talisman Hall was also very bleak. If it were not for the shop being his own, with the current situation, it would be operating at a loss. After all, not only was the foot traffic low. At this stage, all the major shops were selling at promotional prices of 60 to 70% off for the sake of reputation and business, leaving hardly any profit margin. Lu Chongqing walked around his own shop and checked the monthly account book for income and expenditures. Sigh, after deducting all sorts of raw materials and labor costs, we've only made 31 spirit stones in profit. It's not even enough to pay the rent, we actually have to put in money. Fortunately, in a year or 2, the marketplace's foot traffic should gradually increase, and profits will recover somewhat. As Lu Chongqing looked at this month's accounts, he couldn't help but feel speechless. This made Gao He, who was nearby, somewhat uneasy. Although it's common for there to be no foot traffic when the market first opens, and businesses are promoting to capture the market. But for a shop on the main street to make just over 30 spirit stones in a month. It was indeed embarrassing for him, as the talisman master and shopkeeper who presided over the shop. Lu Chongqing waved his hand and did not say much more. He knew this was normal. Because Lu Miaohuan's spiritual talisman shop on the other side was the same. Due to its location and the franchise brand, their situation was slightly better than his. Shortly after, Lu Chongqing visited the Lu family's spiritual talisman shop at Qingzhou, where he normally cultivated with his wife, Lu Miaoge, to enhance their bond and cultivation level. 1 month later. Inside the Qingzhou Mountain practice room, Lu Chongqing was sitting in meditation, practicing the seven luminaries' great freedom sword scripture. Suddenly, within the spiritual power sea of his dantian, the energy surged tumultuously. Sword qi encircled him, sharp and vigorous, as dust scattered and an indistinct spiritual pressure filled the air. 9th level qi refinement. Lu Chongqing opened his eyes, and a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. He was not overly surprised by this breakthrough. After all, cultivating the seven luminaries' great freedom sword scripture, he had a rough idea of his own progress in cultivation. And such a breakthrough was natural for him, smooth and seamless. Lu Chongqing took a look inside at his seven-colored Dan lake and felt the changes after the breakthrough. The spiritual power inside his body had increased by almost 30%. As his cultivation level broke through, the profound origin bead floating above the Dan lake began to rotate slowly. This magical artifact, too, had its effects enhanced as Lu Chongqing's cultivation level advanced. Relying on the profound origin bead, could he now contend with an ordinary foundation establishment cultivator? Lu Chongqing pondered, feeling the spiritual power boosted by the profound origin bead. Based on what he had seen in Red Leaf Valley, he felt that his current strength would allow him to withstand a few moves against a foundation-building great cultivator. If he were to employ all his techniques, he might even have a chance at killing a foundation establishment great cultivator. However, Lu Chongqing merely entertained the thought without any real intention of pursuing it. Who in their right mind would seek out a fight with a foundation-building great cultivator? He vividly recalled Ancestor Chen's desperate self-destruction, wielding spiritual artifacts and heavenly thunder pearls. If not for absolute strength, both parties would end up wounded in a clash of spells. At this rate, I estimate that in 3 to 5 years, I will be ready to make a push for foundation establishment. With the foundation establishment spirit objects and foundation establishment elixir at my disposal, foundation establishment should be almost a certainty for me. Lu Chongqing briefly settled the restless spiritual power and stood up, stretching his limbs and waist. He pushed open the door and stepped out of the practice room. Because the breakthrough had taken a long time, it was now deep into the night. Lu Chongqing, looking at the moonlight, felt no urge for late-night moon-gazing or sentimental musings. He went to Lu Miao's room. Seeing that she had already fallen asleep, he lifted the blanket and got into bed. Holding the lady in his arms, he too gradually drifted off to sleep. 6 days later, Lu Chongqing's 102nd child was born. This child had a spiritual root. It was his 23rd child to possess a spiritual root. With the birth of this child, Lu Chongqing felt an indescribable, profound sensation coursing through him. He knew that his own spiritual root had ascended. It had advanced from a 6th grade spiritual root to a 5th grade spiritual root. Lu Chongqing was not surprised by this advancement of his spiritual root. Previously, he had sensed that his spiritual root was at the brink between the 6th and 5th grade. If another 6th grade spiritual root appeared, it might prompt an immediate promotion. It had been a while, and with the growth of his child's spiritual root, along with the recent birth, the child probably had a 7th grade spiritual root. Thus, his spiritual root had naturally improved. System. Lu Chongqing silently called out in his mind. Name, Lu Chongqing. Status, son-in-law of the Lu family of Qingzhou Mountain. Cultivation level, 9th level Qi refinement. Chapter 272, Breakthrough in Cultivation Level, Spiritual Root Promotion. Lifespan, 30/156, Talent, 5th grade Spiritual Root, Gingjin Body Constitution, Medium grade Spiritual Body, Cultivation Technique, 100 Refinements Treasure Body Art, 7 Luminaries Great Freedom Sword Scripture, Yin-Yang Harmony Technique, Immortal Beauty Technique, Spell, 7 Luminaries Sword Glow, 7 Luminaries Sword Shield, 7 Luminaries Sword Escape, Items, 9 Treasure Jade Rui, Golden Light Brick Talisman Treasure, Black Dragon Magical Bead, Book of Malevolent Curses and Fates, Life-Substituting Talisman, Profound Origin Bead, 2nd rank Puppet, Skills, Talisman Making, 2nd rank, Puppet, 2nd rank, Spiritual Pets, 9 Netherhound, Peach Blossom Goo, 6-Winged Golden Silkworm, Offspring, 102 out of 107, a 5th grade spiritual root, the same as Sister Maiage's, another step closer to the heavenly spiritual root. Moreover, it also helps me a bit more with foundation establishment. Lu Chongqing looked at the spiritual root level on the system's interface and smiled. Looking at the talent column that listed the Gingjin body constitution. As time passed, he could feel that this Gingjin body constitution was also improving in effectiveness as his son, Lu Qingshan, grew up. Spiritual body should fully form along with physical development, probably around the age of 11 or 12, Lu Chongqing thought to himself. A question suddenly occurred to him. Now that he himself possessed the Gingjin body constitution. If he were to have another child with the Gingjin body constitution, what would happen? Could the Gingjin body constitution advance and become a high-grade spiritual body? And what if the next spiritual body was conflicting with the Gingjin body constitution? Could it cause a conflict of spiritual bodies and problems with his own body? Lu Changsheng's mind wandered with these thoughts. After a while, Lu Chongqing figured this was something he'd only know after the birth of his second spiritual body child. Looking at the system interface in front of him, Lu Chongqing saw his age. He suddenly remembered he had inadvertently turned 30. 30 years old, 9th level energy refinement, this cultivation level, in a cultivation family like Qingzhou Mountain, would also be considered a genius. Lu Chongqing murmured to himself. Yet, he wasn't overly proud of this. At this age, being at 9th level energy refinement might be considered genius in a family like Qingzhou Mountain, but within the Immortal sects, it would only be considered average. However, he didn't mind this aspect. After all, his forte was having a solid foundation and being a late bloomer. Having this speed was already good enough. Not striving for the short term, but aiming for lifelong achievements. Besides, starting from scratch as the son of a poor farmer with a 9th grade spiritual root and having a system, he was quite content with his achievements after relentless efforts over just 12 years. There's a saying, at 30, one should stand firm. Now with 7 wives, 11 concubines, 24 maids, and 107 children, I guess I can say I've established something, right? Lu Chongqing suddenly thought to himself. Time flew by, and half a year passed in the blink of an eye. During this period, Lu Changsheng's spiritual root children increased by 2. Both of these children also possessed spiritual roots. This brought the total number of his offspring with spiritual roots to 25, earning him a chance to draw a prize. Unfortunately, his luck with the draw was not very good. He drew a 2nd-rank Spirit Slaughterer skill from the 100 cultivation skills. The Spirit Slaughterer skill allowed Lu Chongqing to skillfully handle most demon beast carcasses without causing waste or damage during skinning, deboning, tendon extraction, and marrow retrieval. But for Lu Chongqing at the moment, this skill was quite superfluous and destined to be unused. After all, he had the skill of talisman making, which meant he didn't need to rely on the Spirit Slaughterer skill for a living. He never went out to hunt demon beasts for a living, because he did not need to rely on selling their materials. However, among the 2 children that were born, the child of Xia Zhiyue possessed a 6th-grade spiritual root. This delighted Lu Chongqing immensely. After all, among his more than 100 children, there were 25 with spiritual roots. But only Lu Qingshan had a middle-grade spiritual root. The child of Xia Zhiyue was his 2nd child to have a 6th-grade spiritual root. However, when Xia Zhiyue was pregnant with this child, Lu Chongqing did not let her consume her own origin source to nourish the fetus excessively. Otherwise, Lu Chongqing felt that Xia Zhiyue, who was in the energy refinement middle stage, could have given birth to a child with a 5th-grade or even a 4th-grade spiritual root. But with the precedent set by the mother of Xia Zhiyue, Lu Chongqing would not do such a thing. He could never bring himself to let a child's mother consume her origin source to the point of depletion and death for the sake of childbirth. He also planned not to let Xia Jiue have any more children in the short term and instead to let her rest and cultivate properly. He would wait until she reached the energy refinement late stage to discuss this matter. Even Lu Changxing was thinking, if Xia Jiue broke through to the foundation establishment stage, could she rely on her spirit-nurturing physique to conceive a child with a high-grade spiritual root? There's about a month left until the day of the 10-year agreement. I wonder how Fei Yu is doing. On this day, after Lu Changxing completed his routine cultivation and talisman making, he remembered that there was about a month left until the 10-year agreement they had made. He was also curious about the current situation of Han Lin, Xiao Xie, and Zhao Qingqing, who were cultivating in the Immortal sects, curious about how they were doing after these 10 years, whether the gap was gradually widening. At the same time, he thought about Li Feiyu, who had been out adventuring for so long without any news, and wondered how he was faring. In the blink of an eye, another half-month passed by. Just as Lu Changxing was preparing to go to the Rui County city for a gathering, he received a letter. It was a letter from Li Feiyu. In the letter, Li Feiyu first talked about his own situation, stating that all was well with him. Thanks to the talismans and spirit stones that Lu Changxing had given him, he had also broken through to the 5th level energy refinement. He was currently exploring a precursor's cave with others and was not sure he could rush back in time for the 10-year rendezvous. Therefore, he had someone deliver the letter in advance. If he did not return in time, he asked Lu Changxing not to worry or miss him. He also urged Lu Changxing to inform Han Lin, Xiao Xie, and Zhao Qingqing about this. Alas, Fei Yu has ultimately chosen this path, Lu Changxing sighed lightly as he read the letter. He had previously guessed that Li Feiyu, by venturing out, would eventually follow a path similar to Xiao Long's, obtaining resources by hunting demon beasts, exploring precursors' caves, and secret realms. Or rather, this was the only way for most loose cultivators to stand out and seize the chance for foundation establishment. But such endeavors came with great risks. After all, it was akin to risking one's life at every turn, and a single encounter with danger or mishap could result in death and a forgotten grave in the wilderness. However, there was nothing Lu Changxing could do to dissuade this. Not everyone can live like him, safely marrying wives and concubines and having children, with the expectation of the great Tao unfolding before them. Nevertheless, Lu Changxing felt that the reason Li Feiyu might not come to the rendezvous was not just because he was held up by matters but also because the gap among the 6 of them had grown too vast. Li Feiyu was once promising in his youth. But 10 years ago, among the 6, it was Li Feiyu who was in the worst situation. Now, 10 years later, Li Feiyu had still spent most of his time in vain. How could his proud nature endure that? Alas, Lu Changxing sighed again, hoping that Li Feiyu was safe and well. Flames appeared in his hand, and he burned the letter to ashes. After informing his wives and concubines, he mounted the Iron Feather Eagle and set off towards Rui County City. Chapter 273, Xiao Xie's Request _1 Rui County City. Inside the Lu family estate, Wanxiang Garden. Huff, huff, huff. In the picturesque garden with its cobblestone paths, several martial masters were leading a group of children in martial arts practice, a morning exercise routine. Although these children were young, their movements were extremely agile as they swung their fists and kicked their feet. Wherever there was an issue, the nearby martial masters would immediately correct them, meticulous in every detail. A few of the children, around 10 years old, created gusts of wind with their fists and feet as they moved, signs of their growing strength. A little farther away, Lu Changxing, dressed in a blue robe with a jade-like countenance and a gentle expression, watched the children practicing martial arts. Now, under his arrangements, these children had begun martial arts practice to fortify their bodies. His eldest son, Lu Pingon, due to his diligence in the martial path, had already cultivated internal qi. According to the secular martial arts circles, which divided martial prowess into categories such as unranked, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade, and innate, he was already considered a 2nd grade expert. A 2nd grade expert at the age of 12 was not unheard of in the secular martial arts circles, but it was exceedingly rare. Aside from a few individuals with exceptional talent, only descendants of cultivators could nurture children to such a level. After all, they were raised in lands with a spiritual vein, consuming spirit rice and spirit food. Their bodies contained little impurities. Such children learning martial arts were all seen as martial prodigies. Moreover, after sending these wives and children to the secular world, Lu Chongqing still regularly sent them spirit rice. However, such strength of a martial arts 2nd grade expert was still beneath the notice of the system. Lu Chongqing checked his son Lu Pingan's panel information through the system. In the strength column, it still displayed a single character, none. Lu Chongqing didn't mind this. If in the early days he harbored some hope of improving his own strength through his children's martial practices, now, he did not entertain such thoughts much. He was more interested in them practicing martial arts for self-defense and maintaining good health. "Daddy, how well did I do?" After the morning practice session, Lu Wuyo cheerfully ran over to Lu Chongqing, calling out and asking with eyes full of adoration and dependency for her father. "You're the one who always slacks off." Lu Chongqing responded with a smile and ruffled his daughter's hair. Then, with a purification art, he turned it into a breeze that dried and cleansed his daughter's sweat-soaked clothes from training. Of course, he didn't play favorites. He did the same for all the children. Witnessing this, the nearby martial masters were filled with reverence. "All right, everyone's tired, let's go have a meal." Lu Chongqing patted the children's heads and led them to have breakfast. The breakfast was very rich and nutritiously balanced. After all, this was a time when the children were growing. In this aspect, Lu Chongqing never stinted, he also wasn't short on money. After eating, Lu Chongqing took Lu Pingan and the other children to the backyard to feed the 9 netherhound. Raised for so many years, the 9 netherhound had grown as robust as a bull. Its mouth full of intersecting sharp fangs and its body covered in jet-black fur that shone like satin. Last year, the 9 netherhound had progressed to a 1st grade middle stage demon beast. But for Lu Chongqing, it meant little. To expect the 9 netherhound to give him a lift was clearly impossible. Unless he was willing to spend a vast amount of resources to cultivate the 9 netherhound and accelerate its growth. But the cost was too great. Lu Chongqing, despite having plenty of spare cash, could not afford such expenses. He planned on raising it slowly. In the future, it would serve as his family's guardian spiritual beast, to accompany his children and protect them on their journeys. 6 days later. "Dad, Uncle Hong is here." While Lu Chongqing was chatting in the backyard with his wives and children, a little one ran over and exclaimed, "You guys keep playing, I'll head over there." Hearing this, Lu Chongqing guessed it might be Xiao Xia, Xiao Qingqing, and Han Lin who had arrived, so he left to greet them. After seeing Hong Yi, the latter indeed confirmed that Han Lin, Xiao Xia, and Xiao Qingqing had arrived and were outside the city. Hearing this, Lu Chongqing nodded and went with Hong Yi to receive them from outside the city. As the two approached the city gates, they immediately saw 2 women and 1 man, 3 figures coming their way. It was Xiao Xia, Xiao Qingqing, and Han Lin. Xiao Xia was dressed in pale moon white, with long black hair cascading down to her waist. Her strikingly beautiful face had not changed much in the past 10 years. Skin fair as jade, features delicate and elegant, she was breathtaking. But her overall appearance and demeanor had undergone an earth-shattering transformation compared to 10 years ago. Back then, she was characterized by her forthrightness and vivacity. Her face wore a bright smile that was as warm as the spring sun, easily inviting favor from those around her. The current Xiao Xia, however, had a cool countenance. Her aura was like that of the pure, untouchable moon shining high above, serene, noble, detached from the world. She was someone people would admire from afar, wary of approaching her without due reverence. Lu Chongqing, observing Xiao Xia's transformation, felt somewhat astonished. He was curious about what she had encountered over the past 10 years that had led to such a drastic change. Although she looked similar, she seemed like a completely different person. If it weren't for her presence with Zhao Qingqing and Han Lin, Lu Chongqing would hardly be confident that this was Xiao Xia. Meanwhile, Zhao Qingqing and Han Lin, aside from appearing a few years older and more mature, had not changed much from 10 years earlier. Daoist Xiao, Daoist Zhao, Daoist Han. Lu Chongqing did not ponder further but greeted them with a smile and a clasped fist. Hong Yi also seemed surprised by Xiao Xia's change but did not scrutinize further. With an open and natural smile, he clasped his fists and said, "My fellow Daoists, you've been well, I trust." Daoist Hong, Daoist Lu. Xiao Xia and her companions nodded to Lu Chongqing and Hong Yi, greeting them in return. They looked at Lu Chongqing, their eyes reflecting a similar surprise as they observed his demeanor, much like how Lu Chongqing and Hong Yi had reacted to seeing Xiao Xia. Chapter 274. Xiao Xia's request. 10 years had passed, and their appearances and demeanors had all changed more or less. Take Hong Yi, for example, who now wore a purple, luxurious brocade robe and a purple gold crown on his head, and had grown a beard at the corners of his lips. Compared with 10 years ago, the whole person seemed countless times more mature and composed. Yet Lu Chongqing still had the appearance of a 20-year-old. His handsome and vibrant face still vaguely reflected the contours of 10 years prior. But his entire being appeared even more ethereal and graceful, refined beyond the mortal realm. Beholding him was like seeing a graceful, flawless beauty, noble and unsullied, like an orchid or a jade tree in spring, bestowing upon others a sense of serenity and detachment. If not for knowing Lu Chongqing's situation, they would have believed him if he claimed to be a core disciple of an immortal sect or a descendant of a grand cultivation family, given his temperament and looks. As Xiao Xia approached and saw Lu Chongqing, an inexplicable emotion surged within her heart, causing it to suddenly flutter. The supreme forgetful love technique that she was cultivating involuntarily began to circulate. Xiao Xia paused slightly in surprise. She noticed that upon seeing Lu Chongqing, her heart, which was as tranquil as the bright moon, began to ripple slightly. After cultivating the supreme forgetful love technique, her heart had become like the moon in the sky, undisturbed by emotions and untrapped by feelings. No matter the event, it was difficult for anything to move her or cause a disturbance within her. However, at this moment, seeing Lu Chongqing made her heart flutter, involuntarily initiating the circulation of the supreme forgetful love technique. Could it be, this is the opportunity, the catalyst for my breakthrough? Xiao Xia's eyes, as cold and moving as the stars and the moon, reflected her thoughts. Having cultivated the supreme forgetful love technique, her cultivation level had reached the perfection of qi refinement. Yet due to her state of mind, she had always been unable to break through. Her master Yun Wanshang had given her 3 years. Now, half of those 3 years had passed. She had also realized that she could not break through on her own. She must venture out, temper her heart in the mortal world, and use external forces to facilitate the breakthrough. That was the purpose of her coming down the mountain for this meeting. Thinking of the remaining year and a half, she planned to travel in the mortal realm in search of that breakthrough opportunity. Unexpectedly, she had just left the mountain and met with old friends, which had caused her heart to quiver and the supreme forgetful love technique to activate automatically. Why isn't Li Feiyu here? Where has Brother Li gone? Han Lin, seeing only Lu Chongqing and Hong Yi, asked aloud. Feiyu went out for experience last year and has been held up by some matters. He might not be able to make it back in time, so he asked me to apologize on his behalf, Lu Chongqing said, bowing his hands. I didn't expect Brother Li to have gone out for experience. Hearing this, Han Lin nodded slightly and didn't say much else. The 3 of you have had a tiresome journey. I have already made arrangements at the Rui Tower, still the same condensing immortal pavilion as before, Hong Yi said, stepping forward to lead the way. Presently, the five of them walked and talked on their way to the Rui Tower, the condensing immortal pavilion. Please take a seat, Hong Yi said with a cheerful smile after everyone was seated, serving spiritual tea and spirit fruit to the guests. Compared to 10 years ago, this reunion clearly lacked the same ease and familiarity. One reason was that their relationships had only been average to begin with. Having not seen each other for 10 years and with only the occasional exchange of letters, another was that 10 years ago, there were those who livened up the gathering and steered the conversation. But now, with Xiao Xia's cold and fairy-like demeanor, she hardly spoke. And with Lu Changxing, Han Lin, and Zhao Qingqing naturally not being talkative people, and the absence of Li Feiyu, however, under Hong Yi's lead, Lu Changxing, Han Lin, and Zhao Qingqing became actively engaged in searching for topics, gradually warming up and having a harmonious and congenial conversation. In the course of the interaction, Han Lin and Zhao Qingqing mentioned some of the happenings within the Qingyun sect and great events of the cultivation world, while Lu Changxing and Hong Yi spoke of some worldly matters, events within the marketplaces. During this, Lu Changxing also mentioned his brother-in-law, Xia Zhaoyang. Lu Changxing hadn't paid much attention to this brother-in-law. He had only occasionally heard about his sister-in-law Xia Zizhu's brother in her letters. When Xia Zizhu sent letters, he had included a few dozen spirit stones as a gesture. It wasn't much, just a token of consideration as a brother-in-law, a simple investment. Xia Zhaoyang, I've heard of him. I never thought he'd actually be a relative of brother Changxing, Han Lin expressed surprise upon hearing this. Working in the Qingyun sect's artifact refining hall, despite being relatively unknown, he was well informed. Since Xia Zhaoyang possessed a 4th-grade spiritual root and had entered the inner sect and been taken as a disciple by a foundation establishment elder, he was familiar with him. At this moment, the others also spoke of their recent conditions, which revealed to Lu Changxing that Han Lin had reached the 6th level of energy refinement, and that Zhao Qingqing, having recently exchanged for a high-rank breakthrough elixir from the sect, had broken through to the 7th level of energy refinement with the help of the elixir. This level of cultivation strength made Lu Changxing sigh with admiration. They were truly worthy of being immortal sect disciples. Likewise, Han Lin and Zhao Qingqing were both outer sect disciples of the Qingyun sect. They were also tied up with side jobs and distracted by various skill-related tasks at times. Yet under these circumstances, one had reached the 6th level, and the other had reached the 7th level of energy refinement. One must know, Lu Miaoge, as the young lady of the Lu family of Qingzhou Mountain with a 5th-grade spiritual root, had also only broken through to the 7th level of energy refinement at the age of 29. As for Hong Yi and Li Feiyu, having lower-grade spiritual roots, one was still at the 4th level of energy refinement, and the other had only recently broken through to the 5th level. As for himself, Lu Changxing chose to exclude himself from comparison. After all, he had an advantage. Externally, he claimed to have only recently broken through to the 6th level of energy refinement. Brother Changxing seems to have the most leisurely life, embraced by the family of cultivators, marrying and having children, while steadily improving in both cultivation and the talisman path, Han Lin remarked with a sense of emotion. He had been the closest to Lu Changxing since the beginning. Although they had grown distant, he still felt some affinity for him. I can't compare with your prospects of the immortal path, Lu Changxing waved his hand and chuckled in response. Then, turning to Xiao Xia, who had a cold and celestial appearance beside him, he inquired, I heard that Daoist Xiao has been taken as a disciple by a nascent soul immortal, may I ask how your recent cultivation has been? Chapter 275, Xiao Xia's request. Lu Changxing asked this out of curiosity about Xiao Xia's situation. Additionally, he felt that Xiao Xia seemed to be sizing him up continuously. Over the years, I have been cultivating in stillness, and now I have achieved Qi refinement to perfection. This descent from the mountain is also a trial to seek an opportunity for a breakthrough, Xiao Xia said gently, her voice clear, cold, and touching. Hiss. Upon hearing these words, everyone couldn't help but express their surprise, drawing in sharp breaths. Chi refinement to perfection, searching for the chance of a breakthrough. It was clear that she was looking for the opportunity to break through to foundation establishment. Unexpectedly, in just 10 years, Wuxia had cultivated to Chi refinement perfection and was preparing for foundation establishment. The gap between her and the others could only be described as heaven and earth. Not only were Hong Yi, Xiao Qingqing, and Han Lin surprised, but Lu Chongqing was also somewhat astonished. However, Lu Chongqing was more bewildered. He remembered that Wuxia had only a 4th-grade spiritual root. A 4th-grade spiritual root, even within immortal sects, couldn't possibly have such a fast cultivation speed. Could it be that Wuxia possesses some sort of spiritual body? Lu Chongqing immediately speculated in his heart. He had a simple reason for such a guess. Wuxia was accepted as a disciple by a nascent soul immortal. If it were just a 4th-grade spiritual root, it was highly unlikely to be favored by a nascent soul immortal to become a disciple. At most, she would attract a foundation establishment elder to accept her as a disciple. After all, within the entire Qingyun sect, nascent soul immortals are few in number. Unless it was an earth spirit root or a heavenly spiritual root with truly extraordinary talent, they would not easily accept disciples. Or could it be the practice of a certain cultivation technique? Lu Chongqing thought of another reason. He, practicing the 7 luminaries' great freedom sword scripture, knew the significant help a good cultivation method could offer to a practitioner. Without that scripture, which could refine elixir toxicity and ignore minor bottlenecks, his cultivation speed would certainly not have been so fast. Therefore, he conjectured that Wuxia was likely also practicing such a technique. But this technique came with side effects. He had read in ancient tomes that many powerful techniques come with side effects. Like masculine becoming feminine, drastic changes in appearance, major changes in character and temperament. Wuxia's current appearance, which had changed, made him suspect it was a case in point. Otherwise, how could there be such a dramatic change after just 10 years of cultivation? However, despite his speculation, this was not the kind of thing Lu Chongqing would inquire about further. In the cultivation world, one's constitution and cultivation methods are exceedingly private matters. Then let me extend an early congratulations to Daoist Xiao on a successful foundation establishment. Hong Yi immediately picked up his teacup in a daze and said so. When the 6 of them first took part in the immortal sect's examination together, he pursued Wuxia with feelings of admiration and love. 13 years have passed, and he has achieved some success in the mortal world. Yet foundation establishment still seemed to him an elusive term. But now, Wuxia was already preparing for foundation establishment, which left him feeling particularly moved. Wishing Daoist Xiao the opportunity and success in foundation establishment. We also wish Sister Xiao success in foundation establishment. We also wish Sister Xiao success in foundation establishment. Lu Chongqing, Xiao Qingqing, and Han Lin also raised their glasses to offer congratulations. Thank you. Wuxia's cool gaze softened somewhat as she raised her glass to drink with everyone. But her eyes involuntarily fell upon Lu Chongqing once again. She discovered that whenever she looked at Lu Chongqing, her heart experienced a faint, almost imperceptible flutter. If not for the operation of the supreme forgetful love technique, even Wuxia herself might think it was an illusion, hard-pressed to grasp this emotional flutter. To break through, do I really need to go through this emotional tribulation? Wuxia murmured to herself as she looked at Lu Chongqing. She thought of her master's teachings. To truly cultivate the supreme forgetful love technique to a state of heartlessness and forgetfulness, one must experience emotional tribulation to comprehend the essence of the supreme forgetful love. Although she didn't know why, facing Lu Chongqing, why such a flutter arose in her heart. But the spiritual mechanism within told her that her chance for a breakthrough might well lie with Lu Chongqing. Thinking that her opportunity for a breakthrough fell upon Lu Changxing, requiring an emotional tribulation with him, her heart was somewhat in disarray, clueless. Over the years, she had been cultivating at Qingyun sect, with little understanding of matters of affection. She had only glimpsed such matters in books a few times. What's more, after practicing the supreme forgetful love technique, her heart had grown more indifferent, almost forgetting affection. Now, to face an emotional tribulation, she indeed didn't know how to proceed or where to start. Didn't I come down the mountain just to find this opportunity? Now that the chance is before my eyes, why should I hesitate? At that moment, Xiao Xie's conflicted heart became resolute. When she initially chose to practice the supreme forgetful love technique, she knew it was a path of no return. She understood that without the mindset of hearing the way in the morning and being ready to die in the evening, her progress in life would be halted, with no hope for the great Tao. Now that the opportunity was right before her, it was naturally not to be missed. Moreover, from the recent chat, she had also learned that Lu Changxing had numerous wives and descendants and rich experience in matters of affection. Perhaps it was for that reason that her breakthrough chance was connected to Lu Changxing. Soon after, Xiao Xie gradually began to speak and joined in on some of the group's topics of conversation. Daoist Hong, Daoist Lu, you who cultivate within the turmoil of the mortal world and tainted with the breath of mortal concerns, it may affect your cultivation. However, if you temper your purity amidst the mortal world, it will assist in cultivation, mindset, and overcoming bottlenecks. When the conversation turned to cultivation, Xiao Xie spoke out, providing a few suggestions on their cultivation. She often had guidance from her nascent soul master and practiced the supreme forgetful love technique, which focuses immensely on mindset, hence she had many insights into this matter. Thank you for the guidance, Daoist Xiao, Hong Yi said, visibly moved by the honor. Thank you for the guidance, Daoist Xiao. Chapter 276, Xiao Xie's request _4 Lu Changxing also bowed slightly, roughly understanding that this concept was not far off from his own initial thoughts. It's not about guidance, just a few suggestions, he said. Although Xiao Xie's visage was cold and detached, like a fairy from the moon palace above the 9 heavens, her words carried no arrogance and were very gentle. Thus, with Xiao Xie's participation, the atmosphere of the conversation became even more harmonious. Especially in the aspect of cultivation, Xiao Xie, a fairy who had achieved perfection in qi refinement, often illuminated the path for others with just a few words, leading to great epiphanies and gains. This also made Lu Changxing realize the importance of companionship within wealth, companionship, law, and land. In the lengthy process of cultivation, nearly everyone would face some difficulties and doubts. If one were to work in isolation, it would be hard to get far. But with a mentor and a group of like-minded Daoist friends to exchange thoughts with, things would be much better. During the conversation, Xiao Xie also occasionally asked Lu Changxing about some matters and questions of everyday life. This was also her reason for engaging in the conversation and chat. From Lu Changxing, she saw the opportunity for her own breakthrough. However, she couldn't directly bring up emotional tribulations or matters of cultivation. She needed to observe and understand Lu Changxing's situation first. After all, emotional tribulations could harm oneself and others if not handled well, and affect others. Although her emotions had gradually become indifferent, she wouldn't become cold-hearted just for the sake of cultivation. Lu Changxing was somewhat surprised by this concern. But hearing that Xiao Xie's descent from the mountain was mainly for mortal heart tempering, he didn't mind. After all, they had all experienced many worldly affairs. However, Xiao Xie and her 2 companions had always been cultivating in immortal sects and rarely dealt with mundane chores. There is no feast that doesn't come to an end in this world. Seeing that the sun was setting, everyone concluded the gathering and bid each other farewell. Zhao Qingqing mentioned that she had a mission to do. And Han Lin was heading home to visit his relatives. Lu Daoist, I have descended the mountain to wander the secular world in search of opportunities, she said. But I am not very familiar with many worldly and cultivation world matters, and I have no specific destination in mind. May I ask you to take me with you for a while, if possible? She asked. Before departing, Wuxia didn't leave immediately but turned to Lu Chongqing and spoke. She was clad in white robes purer than snow, her complexion cold and peerless, like the bright moon in the sky, calm and indifferent, with an aura of otherworldliness. Lu Chongqing was slightly taken aback upon hearing this. However, from their recent conversation, he knew that Wuxia's descent was from mortal heart tempering and to break through foundation establishment. Such a request didn't seem abrupt to him. I usually just travel between Rui Prefecture, Qingzhou Mountain, and the marketplace. If Daoist Xiao temporarily has no destination, I am certainly willing to take her along for the journey, Lu Chongqing said after a moment's consideration. As a disciple of an immortal sect and moreover, a disciple of a nascent soul immortal, Lu Chongqing naturally wished to maintain a good relationship. Just taking her along for a part of his journey, as far as he was concerned, was not a troublesome matter, so he agreed without hesitation. Whether or not it bore fruit, he would still be owed a favor by her. The favor of a disciple of a nascent soul immortal from an immortal sect also counted as a connection and backing. Especially since his Qingzhou Mountain was under the jurisdiction of the Qingyun sect. Thank you, Lu Daoist, Wuxia said, her cool eyes revealing a hint of warmth, like a night blooming Sirius unfolding. I've always been in the secular world and have some understanding of the cultivation world. Why didn't you ask me? Hong Yi remained silent on the side but couldn't help feeling a tinge of sourness in his heart. Chapter 277, My Cultivation with the Fairy. _1 Under the envious gaze of Hong Yi, Lu Chongqing left with Wuxia. I wonder how Daoist Xiao plans to travel on this trip. Lu Chongqing asked Wuxia. Since he had agreed, he naturally wouldn't just let the other stay at his home or in the marketplace without caring for her. He ought to show some hospitality as a host. To travel in all directions, observe all life, amidst the tumult of the mortal world. Wuxia said softly. Her words were not entirely empty. Indeed, to cultivate the supreme forgetful love technique truly required such experiences. However, she had skipped this step by using the red dust elixir. But the red dust elixir was, after all, an external object and had not brought her mind to a state of complete perfection. All life, the chaos of the mortal world. Lu Chongqing nodded thoughtfully. He felt that the cultivation technique practiced by the other must be no simple matter. After all, ordinary cultivation techniques like the returning origin technique and Changchun technique have no requirements in terms of mental state. Only cultivation techniques of the exquisite level and above have such requirements. This is also why the more advanced the cultivation technique, the harder it is to practice and the higher its threshold. I wonder if Daoist Lu has any suggestions. Wuxia asked with a calm and clear expression. Lu has no particularly good suggestions, but in the coming days, I can accompany Daoist Xiao to walk and see this mundane world. Later, we can also go to the cultivation marketplace for a visit. If Daoist Xiao wishes to hunt demon beasts or explore some cave heaven's secret realms, I am of too low a cultivation level to be of help, Lu Chongqing said. In the cultivation world, many people facing bottlenecks choose to hunt demon beasts or explore secret realms. By tempering themselves between life and death, comprehending the great terror within it, and stimulating their potential, they seek to break through their limitations. Although Wuxia did not share the situation, he still had to say this upfront. Thank you for the trouble, Daoist Lu, Wuxia said, nodding slightly. Then, she looked toward Lu Chongqing and asked, as ripples crossed her calm eyes, Daoist Lu, your youthful appearance, is it because you practice wood or water elemental cultivation techniques? She was still unaware of why her heart fluttered in front of Lu Chongqing, prompting the imperceptible love technique to activate automatically. But looking at Lu Changsheng's handsome and youthful features, she couldn't help but wonder if it was related to the cultivation technique he practiced. The change in Lu Changsheng's appearance and temperament was indeed dramatic. 13 years had passed. She had almost forgotten what Lu Changsheng used to look like. Yet she faintly remembered that he was once unremarkable in a crowd. But now, even by her standards, she had to admit that Lu Changsheng was incredibly handsome. Not just handsome. His skin, physique, and temperament were all in perfect harmony, beyond reproach. One would feel at ease and a natural fondness looking at him. Xiao Xia naturally knew that many wood and water elemental cultivation techniques included effects that preserved youth and beauty. But in the qi refinement realm, ordinary cultivation techniques absolutely could not achieve the effect that Lu Changsheng had. Indeed, I am but a 9th grade spiritual root, so I chose to practice a wood elemental life-nourishing cultivation technique. As for preserving youth, I have also taken some elixir medicines for that purpose, Lu Changsheng said, without a blink or a quickened heartbeat. He had become quite adept at such talk. And because he cultivated the immortal beauty technique and was affected by the peach blossom goo, his appearance and temperament did indeed seem like someone who practiced wood elemental techniques for preserving beauty. However, Xiao Xia's inquiry also made him more vigilant. He wondered if the fairy Shiyu could see something in him. After all, he was very aware of the changes in his own appearance and aura. If someone was observant enough, they might notice something. Therefore, he always used a treasure to conceal this aura in his daily life. Otherwise, with many years of cultivating the immortal beauty technique and the effects of the peach blossom goo, just walking down the street would be enough to captivate mortal women with a single glance. It even had a considerable effect on cultivators. I had no idea Daoist Lu was so concerned with his appearance, Xiao Xia said with a slight nod and a tinge of teasing in her voice. She realized that when she was with Lu Changsheng, her state of mind was no longer as undisturbed as usual, like the 9 heavens bright moon, free of ripples. This made her aware that she could use this to temper her own mindset. Since we are cultivating immortality, we should indeed have the appearance of cultivators. After all, with my talents and abilities, I have no hope for the great Tao in this lifetime, so I can only focus on such things, Lu Changsheng said casually. In the path of cultivation, what one fears is the loss of confidence. If Daoist Lu retains a thread of belief, there will surely be a glimmer of hope, Xiao Xia said to Lu Changsheng. I have taken your lesson to heart, Lu Changsheng said courteously with a slight bow, acknowledging her good intentions without being stubborn about it. Then the two walked and talked together as they approached the Lu family mansion. Daddy. In front of the mansion doors, Lu Shila sat on a small stool, eating a candied haw. Seeing Lu Changsheng return, she immediately got up and excitedly shouted. Then, the little girl's gaze shifted to Xiao Xia and she asked, Daddy, is this the new auntie? Fairy auntie, hello, my name is Lu Shila, the little girl said, looking adorably at Xiao Xia with her crisp voice. Ahem, this is Daddy's friend, you can call her Aunt Shiyu, Lu Changsheng said, coughing lightly after hearing his daughter's words. He didn't blame the child for speaking out of turn. Then he turned to Xiao Xia and said, Please do not take offense, Daoist Xiao. No worries, your daughter is very cute, Xiao Xia shook her head slightly. Despite her usually cold and proud expression, her eyes and voice were gentle. Gracefully smoothing her moon-white dress, she crouched down to admire Lu Xiao's charming stance and asked softly, Little sister, how old are you this year? Chapter 278, My Cultivation with the Fairy. I'm 10 years old this year. Lu Shila bit off half of her candied hawthorn on a stick in one bite. Then she offered it to Xiao Xia. Auntie Shiyu, Daddy said when guests come over, we should treat them well, so I want to treat you to candied hawthorn. Xiao Xia was slightly taken aback. She couldn't help but think back to her own childhood. Once upon a time, she, like the little girl in front of her, had a lively face and loved to eat candied hawthorn. Her eyes curved into a smile, and a gentle look appeared on her face. She opened her enticing, rosy lips and took a bite from the half-red fruit on the little girl's stick. Really delicious. Xiao Xie touched Lu Xiao's head and said, her quiet state of mind rippling slightly. This reinforced her certainty that Lu Chongqing was her chance to break through delusions and advance her state of mind. A glowing, moon-white jade pendant appeared in her hand, which she handed to Lu Xile. This is a gift from your auntie. Lu Xile did not accept it immediately but looked toward her father. Since it's a gift from auntie, you should keep it, Lu Chongqing spoke. He could tell that this was not an ordinary jade pendant, it was a spirit jade. As for its value, he couldn't discern it at a glance. But since it was for his child, he didn't decline it. He also knew that by giving a gift to his child, Xiao Xie was expressing her gratitude for bothering him. Thank you, Auntie Xiao. The little girl gleefully accepted the jade pendant. She saw that the jade pendant was translucent and sparkling, very pretty, and she liked it very much. She then talked to Xiao Xie even more warmly, asking if Xiao Xie had eaten and if she would like to go out and play. In the face of the little girl's enthusiasm, Xiao Xie did not decline and went with the flow. Seeing this, Lu Chongqing didn't say anything. He just let his daughter take her out for a chat and a walk. What exactly is the situation with this Xiao Daoist friend? Watching Lu Xile taking Xiao Xie away, Lu Chongqing narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. From their conversation along the way, he was almost certain that there was something off about Xiao Xie. Asking him for company was definitely not as simple as she claimed, just wandering the mortal world with no particular destination in mind. She must have some kind of purpose in mind concerning him. He believed that Xiao Xie's descent from the mountain was indeed to wander the world, tempering her heart in the mortal realm, looking for an opportunity to break through. But to say she had no destination and asked him for company felt far-fetched to Lu Chongqing. After all, as a disciple of a nascent soul immortal from the Qingyun sect, how could she have no destination when going out for training experiences? She would definitely have had someone plan her journey, or even have company. Moreover, he felt that Hong Yi might be more suitable than himself for this kind of wandering temperament. This reason felt strange to Lu Chongqing but was, at most, passable. But along the way, Lu Chongqing had been observing Xiao Xie closely. He noticed that Xiao Xie's gaze often lingered on him. And he keenly perceived that her eyes and demeanor were changing. This change was subtle, and he couldn't describe it exactly. If he had to say, it was that she was not so cold, not so indifferent anymore. Today, when he and Hong Yi went to meet the three of them, he saw Xiao Xie's first glance and noticed the cool, holy aura about her. Like a fairy from the heavens, calm and indifferent, unapproachable. It was still the case when they arrived at Rui Building. Only after a long conversation did Xiao Xie's indifference gradually recede a bit. At that moment, Lu Chongqing realized that Xiao Xie was sizing him up but didn't think too much of it. After she proposed that he accompany her, Lu Chongqing became more cautious, so all along the way, by observing, he could confirm that Xiao Xie must have some purpose for him. Wait a minute, when she's with me, her expressions and attitudes change. Could this be? Lu Changsheng's mouth twitched. He suddenly felt like it might be akin to a goddess showing interest in someone, only then letting go of her usual aloofness. Although I'm quite charming now, it couldn't be this easy, Lu Chongqing stroked his chin. He was someone with a fair sense of self-awareness. He knew well that his charisma could be quite lethal to the opposite sex. But it was unlikely to make Xiao Xie, a fairy of her stature, fall head over heels and take the initiative to throw herself at him. Could it be? A flash of enlightenment struck Lu Changsheng's mind. His mental spirit stirred, tuning into the peach blossom goose spiritual essence within his forehead. He wanted to see if this thing was once again stirring up romantic fortunes for him. After all, his relationship with Xiao Xie was nothing extraordinary. Now that she had come down to wander the mortal realm, with such an unusual behavior, he couldn't help but speculate if romantic fortune was at play. Buzz, 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 a faint activity arose from the peach blossom goo between his brows, conveying a sense of awareness. As if to tell Lu Chongqing, it was indeed about romantic fortune. Good heavens! Receiving this feedback from the peach blossom goo, Lu Chongqing inwardly exclaimed in surprise. Understanding that Xiao Xiye's abnormal behavior was indeed related to romantic fortune, he was at a loss for words for a moment. But it also eased his mind quite a bit. Knowing that Xiao Xiye's request to accompany him carried no ill intent, no ulterior motive. Nevertheless, this romantic fortune is not so easy to deal with. Lu Chongqing took a deep breath and exhaled softly. To say he harbored no thoughts about Xiao Xiye would be impossible. After all, this fairy Xiao was not only exquisitely beautiful but also possessed a fourth-grade spiritual root. She even had some kind of spiritual body. If she were just an ordinary inner sect disciple of the Qingyun sect, that would be one thing, with some hope of a connection. But she wasn't just any disciple from the immortal sects. She was a disciple of a nascent soul immortal. With such status and identity, if he were to impregnate her and have children, chances are it would bring trouble. After all, being accepted as a disciple by a nascent soul immortal implies exceptional talent, and she would be entrusted with high expectations by the immortal sects, fully devoted to her cultivation. Chapter 279, My Cultivation with the Fairy. If I end up having several children, that would delay the prime of my early years. Qingyun sect might, for the sake of letting their disciples focus on cultivation and sever worldly ties, just sever me instead. By then, what was supposed to be a streak of romantic luck would turn into a calamity. So Lu Chongqing was very clear in his heart that a woman like Xiao Xiye, he currently could not resist. Meanwhile, under the guidance of Lu Shila, Xiao Xiye met the other wives, concubines, and children of Lu Chongqing. She knew that Lu Chongqing had married numerous wives and concubines, and had many children. But when she actually saw so many wives and children all at once, she still felt a bit surprised. However, she didn't know that these 20-plus children were only a small part. After separating from Lu Chongqing and spending some time chatting and playing with Lu Shila and a few children, Xiao Xiye found her mindset gradually returning to tranquility and indifference. She reverted to her usual state of the supreme forgetful love technique. Is it really so? Xiao Xiye murmured to herself, her eyes clear as water, detached and calm as she looked into the distance. She was almost certain that only Lu Chongqing could help her see through illusions and break through to the next realm. As for how to see through them, she had some idea in her mind. When she was by Lu Changsheng's side, her mental state was affected, causing the supreme forgetful love technique to operate automatically. If she could be unaffected in any way, keeping her heart tranquil and detached no matter what, she thought that would be seeing through the illusions and achieving a great state of mind. However, she still needed to continue to confirm this. In this manner, Xiao Xiye stayed at the Lu residence. Lu Chongqing had planned to return to Qingzhou Mountain after the gathering, but due to Xiao Xiye's presence, he changed his plans. He spent his time, taking Xiao Xiye to wander around Rui Prefecture, observing the so-called afflictions of life and the chaos of the red dust. Lu Chongqing himself didn't know what these afflictions and chaos specifically entailed. And Xiao Xiye couldn't explain clearly either. So, considering that she came from a literary family and had entered Qingyun sect for cultivation at the age of 15, he decided to show her some of the suffering of life, the hardships of the lower class, like the women who were forced into brothels. The roadside vendors in the streets and alleys, the roughnecks, the beggars with disabilities. The dock workers who labored in hard and toilsome jobs. The tea houses, the wine lodges, the restaurants, patrons of all different stripes. The gangs of the Jianghu, killing and fighting over interests. One day, Lu Chongqing took Xiao Xiye to a village in Rui Prefecture. It was a very poor and backward village. Yellow earth facing the sky, the mud roads pitted and uneven. Fields lined the sides of the road. The crops in the fields had been completely harvested. But one could still see some emaciated and frail farmers in ragged clothing, with children, carrying baskets on their backs, picking up the grains missed during the harvest in the fields. Among them were some women who had just given birth, carrying infants who were crying for food, with faces of sheer exhaustion. When they saw Lu Chongqing and Xiao Xie, fear and humility showed in their eyes, with stiff, ingratiating smiles. Sigh. Lu Chongqing sighed deeply at the sight. He did not know how Xiao Xie's state of mind had been these days. But the hardships of this world genuinely made him feel a heavy heart. He felt somewhat relieved, apprehensive, and panicked. Fortunate to possess a spiritual root, he had initially obtained a celestial fate. He was able to go to Qingyun's sect to participate in the Immortal sect's examination. Otherwise, a peasant boy like him, even if he awakened his memories and had a system, would still face great difficulties. It would take an unknown amount of time, energy, and effort to struggle up from this lowly position. Xiao Daoist, have you gained anything in these past few days? Lu Chongqing sighed lightly and asked Xiao Xie. Seeing all the hardships made him cherish his current life even more and gave him the motivation to keep striving. All living beings suffer, Xiao Xie said softly. These days, she had seen much with Lu Chongqing, and her heart was deeply touched, reaping no small gains. But she could feel that these were not greatly helpful for her own breakthrough. The main focus was still on Lu Chongqing. However, through the days of being together, Xiao Xie's heart had also sunk into the influence of Lu Chongqing. Whenever they came into close contact, Xiao Xie felt herself enveloped in a spring breeze that swayed her mental spirit, prompting the supreme forgetful love technique to activate. But she also realized that just this was not enough, not sufficient for her to see through illusion, for her mental state to break through. She knew in her heart that she needed to go further with Lu Chongqing. Only by experiencing the so-called love trial could she truly refine her mental state, achieve great enlightenment, and see through illusion with the supreme forgetful love. Lu Daoist has worked hard these past few days, Xiao Xie looked at Lu Chongqing and said. Her voice was no longer so cold, but much gentler. Soon after, the two returned to Rui Prefecture to prepare for their visit to the Cultivation marketplace the next day. Night fell. Because they were leaving tomorrow, Lu Chongqing naturally spent a good time with his wives and concubines. Meanwhile, Xiao Xie sat cross-legged in her room. Her mind was in turmoil, she couldn't fall asleep or enter a state of cultivation. Love trial. Xiao Xie understood that she had been refining her mental state and seeing through illusion with the help of Lu Chongqing. Yet, at the same time, these days had also made her troubled by the cage that was Lu Chongqing. Although her mental state had improved, she had sunk deeper and had to rely on the love trial for great enlightenment. She operated the supreme forgetful love technique and suppressed her distracting thoughts. She stepped out of her room, her skirt fluttering, landing on the roof, and quietly gazed at the bright moon in the sky. The moonlight spilled over her, bathing her moon-white dress and flawless body, making her even more immaculate and noble, like the Guanghan fairy in the Moon Palace. The gentle night breeze lifted a corner of the moon-white dress, revealing the fairy's smooth, round legs, like ivory-white jade without an ounce of excess flesh, naturally perfect, unrivaled in grace and beauty. The wind also lifted the fairy's black hair. Strands of black hair and the moon-white dress swayed in the wind, dancing with the breeze, reflecting the owner's current mood and state of mind. Her bright, moon-like eyes gazed absently at a courtyard in the residence. Phew! Xiao Xie took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. She knew that without a mental realization, she would never be able to refine the supreme forgetful love technique. Immediately, a look of determination appeared in her eyes as she floated towards Lu Chongqing's courtyard. She was ready to tell him directly that she needed to experience the love trial to completely see through illusion. And not just to casually observe the myriad aspects of the world, amid the muddled and tumultuous mortal life. Chapter 280, Wuxia, so this is the love tribulation. _1 above the pitch-black night sky, a silver moon hung high. Its faint moonlight cascaded onto the pavilions and towers of the Liu family estate, as if draping them in a layer of silver gauze. The entire Liu family estate was engulfed in darkness and silence, the only exception was a courtyard within the inner house, still brightly lit. In the glow of frost-like radiance, a figure clad in white, resembling the celestial fairy of the bright moon above, drifted towards this courtyard, her sashes fluttering in the night breeze. Before even alighting, Wuxia, like the Guanghan fairy of the Moon Palace, suddenly heard a plaintive sound, sorrowful yet enchanting, filled with 1,000 graces. The sound caused Wuxia's exquisite features to slightly startle, and her heartbeat suddenly accelerated. This hastened pulse speeded the practice of her supreme forgetful love technique. What sound is this? Wuxia furrowed her pretty brows, somewhat perplexed in her heart. Why did such a simple sound cause such a throb within her? The supreme forgetful love technique ran its course, suppressing this inexplicable emotional pulse. She then followed the sound into a room within the courtyard. The shadows reflected by the window allowed her to instantaneously guess what was happening inside. This made her heart start thumping again. She realized her behavior was inappropriate. Her arrival was ill-timed. But a tremor of excitement surged within her, a tantalizing sensation, compelling her to channel a sliver of spiritual power into her beautiful eyes and peer through the window. Inside the chamber, she saw several Liu family ladies she had met during the day with Liu Chongqing. In an instant, Wuxia felt as if struck by lightning. Her stunning face instantly flushed with crimson, almost letting out an alarmed cry. This single glance brought an unprecedented and intense impact to Wuxia. The Tao heart that had just been calmed by the supreme forgetful love technique exploded at this moment. Her Tao heart shuddered, and the supreme forgetful love technique nearly failed, causing her delicate body to momentarily weaken. At the age of 15, she had entered the Immortal sects, embarking on a single-minded path of cultivation. Though she had heard of the matters between men and women, and had read some relevant books, she was still naively ignorant. Such scenes were foreign to her. Let alone such stimulating and shocking imagery. Under the moonlight, Wuxia's skin shone like luminous jade, reflecting with the cool moonlight. Her serene and holy visage, usually as cool as the 9 heavens' bright moon, was now flushed like the rosy dawn, a beauty beyond compare. Her emotions rose and fell tumultuously, leaving her dazed and at a loss. Could this be the emotional trial to endure? Wuxia bit her lip lightly, the supreme forgetful love technique running at full speed, suppressing the roaring tides within her heart. Just now, the shock of the imagery she witnessed caused her heart to accelerate and her body to go weak. But simultaneously, the supreme forgetful love technique also spun wildly. The robust and impermeable barrier at her bottleneck seemed to subtly loosen at this moment. She faintly realized what her emotional trial was. Before this, she had only known that she must endure an emotional trial. That trial fell upon Liu Chongqing. Liu Chongqing was the opportunity for her breakthrough. But as for the specifics of the emotional trial, she herself was unclear. Because the word emotion is too broad. It could be familial love, friendship, romantic love, or the affection between a man and a woman. And each of these emotions can be divided into many types. In this moment, she vaguely understood. It was about the emotions between a man and a woman. The emotions that include desire between a man and a woman. What she needed to do was suppress emotions, forget desires. Thus, to know emotions yet forget them, to have emotions yet remain detached. Upon realizing her emotional trial, Wuxia's eyes, as pure as the bright moon, flickered indecisively, trembling slightly. Not only was her heart in disarray, but her mind was also in chaos, feeling lost and dazed. And at the same time, inside the courtyard room, the diligently busy Liu Chongqing acutely sensed a spying presence. He frowned slightly. Although his estate lacked a great formation for protection, there were protectors patrolling the outer estate, and a 9 netherhound guarding the inner estate. In the mortal world, it would be extremely difficult for any master to infiltrate. His gaze pierced through the doors and windows, looking outside. He immediately spotted a white silhouette as ethereal as a fairy. Xiao Shiyu. Lu Chongqing looked at the white silhouette, somewhat surprised. He wondered what business the fairy, Shiyu, could have with him in the dead of night. Not cultivating or sleeping at night, did she come to chat or share her heart? However, seeing that the eavesdropper was Xiao Shiyu, not some malevolent figure, Lu Chongqing couldn't help but feel reassured. Yet this moment of inaction caused his wife, Lu Lanshu, to suddenly feel abandoned. Her elegant features from the daytime, now flush and bewitching, looked back at her husband. Her half-lidded eyes brimming with allure, her voice soft and sultry, she asked, "My lord, what is it?" The 3 other wives also turned their gaze towards Lu Chongqing. "It's nothing." Lu Chongqing, noting Xiao Shiyu hurriedly departing as soon as he looked out, didn't dwell on it further. Presumably, Xiao Shiyu had some urgent matter with him to come at such a late hour, thus stumbling upon such a scene. Besides, he couldn't very well stop what he was doing now to go ask Xiao Shiyu what the matter was, right? Meanwhile, Xiao Shiyu, amidst her inner turmoil, sensed the gaze of Lu Chongqing upon her. Even though she cultivated the supreme forgetful love technique and possessed a pure nature, unfamiliar with worldly affairs, in such a situation, her heart couldn't help but flutter. Almost as if fleeing, she left the courtyard and floated back to her own. Returning to her room, Xiao Shiyu ran the supreme forgetful love technique swiftly, allowing her exquisite complexion to gradually return to its aloof coolness. But recalling that scene, she still felt a trembling deep within her soul, her delicate body burning with heat. So this is my emotional trial. No wonder I have always been unable to perfect the supreme forgetful love technique. My state of mind is still far from sufficient. Chapter 281, Xiao Xie, so this is the love tribulation. Xiao Xie murmured to herself. Without realizing it, she reached out to touch her cheek, which was slightly warm. She didn't even know what had just happened to herself. Was she bewitched? She was clearly aware of what Lu Chongqing was doing. And yet, she still stole a glance. If I could completely control and suppress this emotion, perhaps that would be the time when my state of mind reaches completion and I can see through illusions. As she practiced the supreme forgetful love technique, Xiao Xie's emotions gradually stabilized. But the thought of having to completely control these emotions made Xiao Xie sigh quietly. She looked up at the bright moon hanging in the night sky through her window. Somehow, the scene she had just witnessed appeared again before her eyes. It caused her freshly calmed heart to flutter slightly. Xiao Xie did not dispel the embarrassing image from her mind. Instead, she chose to confront it directly. And even, tried to imagine herself in it. Because, for her, it was also a way to temper her state of mind. If she couldn't even control such emotions, how could she talk about transcending the emotional tribulation and seeing through illusions? It was unclear how much time had passed. Xiao Xie found she could now look at the scene without any perturbation. Face the image that challenged her Tao heart. By then, daylight had come. Xiao Xie stood up, straightened her moon-white dress, and applied a cleansing technique to herself. She prepared to find Lu Chongqing and have a frank discussion, to reveal the issues of the emotional tribulation. And explain last night's events. Lu Daoist. Xiao Xie went to the front courtyard and found Lu Chongqing. Because of last night's events, the sight of Lu Chongqing caused a faint ripple in her heart. However, after a whole night of tempering her state of mind, she didn't show any unusual signs. Xiao Daoist, let's have breakfast before setting off, Lu Chongqing said casually. He didn't bring up last night's events. After all, it was somewhat awkward to discuss such matters. The best approach was to act as if nothing had happened. It's not about that. I have something to discuss with Lu Daoist, Wuxia said, shaking her head slightly and speaking earnestly. Seeing her serious expression, Lu Chongqing knew she must have some important matter to discuss. Perhaps this was also why she came looking for him last night. Lu Chongqing immediately escorted Wuxia to a secluded side hole. He inquired, "May I know what Xiao Daoist would like to discuss?" Lu Daoist must have noticed a clear change in me compared to 10 years ago, Wuxia said softly, looking at Lu Chongqing. Lu Chongqing nodded. He was unsure as to why Wuxia was suddenly broaching this subject. "It's because of the cultivation technique I have been practicing," Wuxia continued. Having spent the last few days with Lu Chongqing, experiencing life lessons and observing the lives of mortals, she had been observing him. Through her observation, Lu Chongqing had passed her tests. That's why she thought of revealing the matters of the emotional tribulation. If she was to reveal the tribulation, she needed to explain the whole context. When Lu Chongqing heard this, he thought to himself, as expected. As he had suspected, Wuxia's changes were due to the practice of a particular cultivation technique. But he still didn't know why Wuxia was mentioning this to him. Not waiting for Lu Chongqing to speak, Wuxia continued, "The cultivation technique I'm practicing is called the Supreme Forgetful Love Technique. To fully master this technique, one must experience the trials of the mortal world, understand grief and joy, separation and union, to comprehend the essence of supreme forgetfulness. My master crafted elixir medicines for me to skip this step and master the technique. But my state of mind still has flaws, and I find it difficult to break through." Wuxia said slowly, maintaining an indifferent expression and a calm demeanor. "Supreme Forgetful Love Technique." Lu Chongqing nodded slightly. He knew that profound techniques like these have such requirements, therefore, they are very difficult to practice. Like the 7 luminaries' great freedom sword scripture he practiced, there were requirements for one's state of mind. However, he was an exception, having a shortcut to overlook this aspect. "My state of mind is incomplete, and I gradually realized that I must overcome the emotional tribulation to break through the illusion and reach the fulfillment of my state of mind. My main purpose for descending the mountain is to undergo this emotional tribulation. And when I met Lu Daoist, I sensed an opportunity for a breakthrough from you. The emotional tribulation is likely related to Lu Daoist. That's why I asked Lu Daoist to accompany me on part of my journey." Wuxia spoke with a cool countenance and a tranquil tone. "Emotional tribulation," Lu Chongqing uttered, his heart suddenly enlightened upon hearing this. Before, he only knew that Wuxia was close to him and asked him to accompany her for a part of her journey because of the peach blossom goo. But as for the specifics, he had no idea. Now, hearing Wuxia's words, he suddenly understood. The so-called emotional tribulation must involve experiencing matters of affection. Wuxia left the mountain, intending to experience emotions to overcome her bottleneck. But just after meeting him, the peach blossom goo made these emotions fall upon him. Wuxia had also realized this, which is why she had been observing and sizing him up continuously at the Rui Tower. And she took the initiative to say that she was planning to travel without a particular destination in mind and asked him to accompany her. The goal was to try to overcome her emotional tribulation through him and thus make a breakthrough. Now that she was being upfront, she likely wanted him to do something. As a good friend, helping Xiao Daoist with her troubles is naturally my unquestionable duty. I'm not sure how Xiao Daoist intends to undergo this emotional tribulation, but if I can be of help, Lu would naturally help. Since the other party had put it that way, Lu Chongqing felt it would not be good to refuse and thus spoke. As for this matter of emotional tribulation, I am not very clear about it myself. Originally, when I was beside Lu Daoist, my thoughts would become disordered, and my cultivation technique would operate automatically. Therefore, I would like to ask Lu Daoist to cooperate with me in an attempt, but last night, Wuxia, with a cold expression, seemed as ethereal as a fairy from the Moon Palace, her demeanor supremely pure and holy as she explained her situation. After all, when she decided to practice the supreme forgetful love technique, she possessed the resolve to ask about the way in the morning and be prepared to die in the evening, determination. Now that the way lay in front of her, she naturally wouldn't be coy like a young girl. After hearing Xiao Xia's words, Lu Chongqing was momentarily stunned. Although he had thoughts about Xiao Xia, he had suppressed these ideas for the time being due to her status and identity. But what she was talking about now, this undergoing of emotional tribulation, was entirely a proactive offering. In such a situation, saying he would cooperate was possible, and maybe with some deeper persuasion, he could even get Xiao Xia to have a child with him before she returned to Qingyun sect. But Lu Chongqing did not harbor these thoughts. The identity of a nascent soul immortal disciple made him apprehensive. Regarding this matter of emotional tribulation, Lu also has some views, feeling that it may not necessarily require my involvement. Xiao Daoist can do this, Lu Chongqing pondered for a moment before speaking tactfully. If it were anyone else offering such an opportunity, someone, would naturally not refuse. But Xiao Xia's status and identity were something he couldn't afford to provoke. Acting on it would not bring him much advantage, and it was likely to cause him endless embarrassment. Therefore, if she could resolve this emotional tribulation on her own, owing him a favor would be ideal. Is that really possible? Xiao Xia, after a moment of silence upon hearing Lu Changsheng's words, asked. Evidently, her heart was not entirely calm either. After all, her supreme forgetful love technique would be effected in front of Lu Chongqing. She couldn't achieve a state of absolute detachment. Xiao Daoist can give it a try. Lu Chongqing handed her a soft cushioned meditation mat. Immediately, the plan for both to tour the marketplace was revised. Inside the room, Xiao Xia, with a cold countenance, sat cross-legged on a pink meditation mat. Suddenly her beautiful brows furrowed slightly. Then, on her cold and holy face, a hint of blush appeared, rendering her stunningly beautiful. The blush spread at a visible pace. It made her beautiful face flush like the rosy clouds, her red lips slightly parted, and her breathing somewhat hurried. After a few breaths, the blush spread from her cheeks to her ears, making her delicate and lovely ears thoroughly red, and her snow-white, graceful neck also gradually reddened. The perfect and delicate body inside the fairy's moon-white dress also started to tremble slightly. The embroidered shoes covering her round and petite jade feet trembled lightly, restless and uneasy. A moment later, a suppressed heavenly sound emanated from the fairy's throat, causing her to furrow her brows in pain, then look befuddled, her red lips parted, as she collapsed to the ground. Huff! 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 Xiao Xia's bewitching eyes looked confusedly at the eaves, carefully observing the changes in her heart. In a daze, she realized the state of her heart at that moment, in that overwhelming, dreamlike instance, was somewhat similar to last night when she witnessed the scene that impacted her Dao heart. To break through illusions, one must control these emotions. Xiao Xia murmured to herself. She could feel that this method indeed helped her, bringing a hint of ease to her heart. It felt as if much of the irritability and stray thoughts regarding her cultivation breakthrough had diminished. Even her realm seemed to have loosened a bit. But it's still not enough. Xiao Xia operated her supreme forgetful love technique, her eyes cold and calm as she murmured to herself. Propping up her body with her fair arms, she straightened her dress, then Xiao Xia pushed open the room door and went out to find Lu Chongqing. Chapter 282, Yun Wansheng, could something have happened to Shiyu? _1 Lu Chongqing hadn't expected Xiao Xia to return to seek him out so soon. Looking at Xiao Xia in front of him, wearing a moon-white long dress with delicate features and an exceptionally ethereal and cool demeanor, Lu Chongqing couldn't help feeling somewhat guilty. After all, looking back on it now, his idea seemed a bit off. Who would ask someone to cultivate like that? However, thinking about the unearthly beauty standing before him, as if she were a fairy from the Guanghan Moon Palace embarking on cultivation trials as he had suggested, a faint fire of irritation began to smolder in Lu Changsheng's dantian. Xiao Daoist, is the method I proposed effective? Lu Changsheng gathered his mental spirit, calmed his restless mind, and asked earnestly. Yes, Xiao Xie replied softly. Her cold and succinct words were filled with temptation, stirring the imagination. If it's been of any help to you, that's good, Lu Changsheng exhaled lightly. Although he felt a little disappointed, he had at least managed to deal with the troublesome matter concerning Xiao Xie. After all, if he were to actually intervene, the loss would outweigh the gain, and it would easily cause trouble. However, Xiu can feel that this effect is not enough to break through the bottleneck, so I will still need Lu Daoist's help. Xiao Xie's chest heaved slightly, and she spoke with her lips barely parting. A ripple appeared in her cool and calm eyes. Clearly, her heart was not as tranquil as her outward appearance suggested. After all, the supreme forgetful love technique is not about being truly without emotion, but about being so immersed in the great Tao that one remains unaffected by emotions and desires. Furthermore, she had not yet cultivated to such a level. Upon hearing this, Lu Changsheng's mouth twitched. He had not expected Xiao Xie to still require his assistance. This meant that what he had proposed had some effect, but it was not sufficient. He did not speak. It went without saying, he could help, but the benefits did not balance out the costs. More loss than gain. Xiao Xie noticed the hesitation in Lu Changsheng. Although inexperienced in worldly affairs, she wasn't entirely naive. She knew that her request made Lu Changsheng apprehensive, probably because he was worried that such a matter would bring him trouble. Lu Daoist, Xiu knows this matter is making it difficult for you. If Lu Daoist is willing to help, Xiu would be immensely grateful and ready to offer thanks, or if Lu Daoist has any requirements, please feel free to make them. Also, Xiu is willing to make a Dao hard vow that, regardless of the outcome of this emotional trial, success or failure, I will not involve or blame Lu Daoist. All consequences will be borne by Xiu alone, so Lu Daoist can rest assured, Xiao Xie said. Her eyes locked onto Lu Changsheng. A trace of heartfelt crimson flashed through her icy eyes but was quickly replaced by a look of determination. Now that the opportunity for her breakthrough was within reach, even her Moon Palace serene heart of the supreme forgetful love technique could hardly suppress this sense of urgency. Lu Changsheng, upon hearing these words, pursed his lips. He could tell that Xiao Xie was sincere. And he was quite pleased with her proactive approach. A Dao heart vow might not be infallible, but for someone like Xiao Xie, who was single-minded in her cultivation, it was a reliably safe course of action. Since she had said so much, he felt he could agree to the arrangement. After all, he wasn't planning to make her bear children right now. Having made up his mind, Lu Changsheng said to Xiao Xie, since Xiao Daoist has put it that way, how can I refuse? There's no need for any lavish gifts, I only hope that in the future you can help me with one thing. I have yet to decide what it is, I will let you know once I have figured it out, Lu Changsheng stated. In his view, having helped Xiao Xie with such an intimate act as surmounting an emotional trial, Xiao Xie might as well be considered the mother of his future child. It was not convenient for him to take her home to be the mother now, but it would be no issue once he had the strength to do so. Considering Xiao Xie's current cool demeanor, if she continued to progress in her cultivation, she might become an icy statue. So, it was necessary to plant a seed earlier on. After all, Lu Changsheng, never forced anyone. Upon hearing this, Xiao Xie's eyebrows knitted slightly. She would not have agreed to such a condition from anyone else, as it was akin to a sword hanging over one's head, making it difficult to cultivate in peace. But considering this was related to her great Tao opportunity and the cause and effect of her emotional trial, and given her interactions with Lu Changsheng over these days, she felt relatively confident about his character. Otherwise, she wouldn't have disclosed her emotional trial to him. She nodded and said, as long as it does not go against the Tao heart, she will do her best to fulfill it when the time comes. Xiao Xie spoke, and then solemnly raised her hand to take the vow. She vowed that she would not blame Lu Changxing whether the emotional trial succeeded or failed, and that she alone would bear the consequences of any event. Bearing a few children shouldn't count as going against the Tao heart, right? Lu Changxing thought to himself, watching Xiao Xie make her vow. He nodded slightly and said to Xiao Xie, "How do you plan to start?" At these words, Xiao Xie blinked in surprise. She knew her emotional trial was related to the affections between men and women, her own desires, but how to begin, or what to do next, she found herself at a loss. After all, in this matter, she was truly clueless. The next moment, she saw Lu Changsheng's handsome face drawing closer. A warm, moist breath approached her lips and enveloped them. A blush like blooming snow lotuses crept onto Xiao Xie's face. Her heart pounded furiously, wanting to push Lu Changxing away. But the surging shyness and desire within her, controlled by the supreme forgetful love technique, suppressed her instinctive reaction. Her eyelashes quivered as she hid her embarrassment, her face filled with bewilderment and helplessness, allowing him to take the lead. Chapter 283, Yun Wansheng, could something have happened to Shiyu? The fervent breath pried open her clenched teeth, intensifying her emotions to an overpowering degree, rendering her nearly incapable of self-control. No, this can't happen. Moments later, Xiao Xie felt the supreme forgetful love technique almost fail, and a languid moan escaped from her nostrils as she lightly struggled. Her stunningly beautiful face was flushed with a rosy hue, her delicate body going limp in waves. She seemed powerless to resist, almost collapsing in Lu Changsheng's arms. After a while, Lu Changsheng embraced Xiao Xie's tall and graceful figure, and in a gentle voice, he said, "Daoist Xiao, is this the desired effect?" Xiao Xie's eyes were slightly downcast, her lips tenderly pink as she softly murmured an "Hom." The sunlight outside streamed through the lattice windows, sprinkling over the fairy's jade-like face. It bloomed on her beautiful cheeks like trees laden with snow and brought a hint of shallowness and enchantment to her holy and charming appearance. With the circulation of the supreme forgetful love technique, Xiao Xie gradually suppressed and extinguished the tide of carnal desire. Would Daoist Xiao like to continue? Lu Changxing, holding her waist and smelling the fragrance from her hair, asked, looking at Xiao Xie in such a state. He found the fairy Shiyu's appearance quite amusing. Normally, she seemed cold and aloof, like the 9 heavens bright moon high above, serene, sacred, indifferent, and calm, provoking only distant admiration without daring any desecration. Yet with the slightest intimacy, she would become like a little girl, her face flush with shyness, her body going weak. Once it stopped, she would slowly revert to the ethereal fairy demeanor. Wait, just a moment. Xiao Xie, with eyes enchanting as the moon, allowed the man to wrap his arms around her waist and smell her dark silky hair as she whispered softly. She could feel that just being held like this, breathing in the masculine scent of Lu Changxing, made her heart restless. Lu Changxing, hearing this, remained silent. He simply held her, quietly embracing the tall, exquisite softness, relishing her beauty. After all, he was helping someone in her cultivation. They say that doctors possess compassion, and saving a life is more meritorious than building a 7-tiered pagoda. In Lu Changsheng's view, assisting someone in their cultivation was much the same. A man and a woman, like a pair of celestial beings, quietly embraced each other. It was unclear how much time passed. Xiao Xie's emotions stabilized. She had gradually become accustomed to Lu Changsheng's breath and embrace. Suddenly, the fairy pursed her lips and took the initiative to lift her cold jade-like face, the moon-white embroidered shoes elevating slightly. Their lips met, eyes closed gently. During this process, Xiao Xie's cheeks began to blush once again. It was her first kiss just now. And now, it was her first time initiating a kiss. During this, she remained shy and passive, allowing the actions to happen to her without taking the lead. Desire surged wildly within her, making the supreme forgetful love technique circulate rapidly, her stunningly beautiful cheeks radiating with allure, a blush spreading from her face to her ears and neck. Moments later, the raised tips of her toes inside the moon-white embroidered shoes began to weaken along with her delicate body. And just then, Wuxia, who was lost in the intoxication as if savoring fine wine, suddenly stiffened as if struck by lightning. With a soft yelp, her entire delicate body went limp, and she began to tremble. This caused the effect of the supreme forgetful love technique to directly fail. No, this mustn't happen. The beautiful face of the fairy flushed red as blood, experiencing an odd sensation on her chest, her legs going weak. She quickly gasped for breath and spoke out to stop Lu Changsheng's actions. Huff! 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 As their lips parted, Wuxia gasped for air, her breath as fragrant as orchids. She pursed the corners of her lips and, pretending to be composed, lifted her hand to wipe away the traces at the corner of her mouth, and said, Lu Daoist, let's call it a day. She felt that things were moving too fast, and she had to take time to properly digest it. But having said that, her body had yet to recover from its trembling, still leaning in Lu Changsheng's arms. All right, as Daoist Shao wishes. Lu Changsheng looked at the radiant beauty in his arms, her lips lustrous and full, at the fairy who was struggling to maintain self-control, and a hint of amusement crossed his mind. He thought to himself that this fairy's combat strength was really too weak. If this were the case, her path to cultivation would indeed be very long. After a while, Wuxia's demeanor calmed down a bit, she gave Lu Changsheng a salute and staggered away. Watching the hastily departing fairy, Lu Changsheng chuckled softly, twirling his fingers and bringing them to his nose to sniff. He could still smell a fragrance like a blossoming garden of flowers. He couldn't help thinking, the fairy indeed carried her own weight, certainly not one to leave her children hungry in the future. Phew! Having just assisted the fairy in her cultivation, Lu Changsheng felt that it had also affected him, his mind a bit disordered. He would need to find his wives and consorts to help with his own cultivation. After returning to her room, Wuxia had a maid fill a tub with water for her to bathe. She soaked alone in the bathtub scattered with flower petals. Is it worth it? During the recent cultivation session, which nearly nullified the supreme forgetful love technique, her state of mind seemed to revert to her once genuine and lively self, her heartstrings beginning to quiver. She questioned herself, whether it was worth it to do this for the sake of cultivation. A trace of confusion flashed in Wuxia's eyes. She recalled joining the Qingyun sect, her master Yun Wanshang imparting the supreme forgetful love technique to her, and her own resolute choice of the supreme forgetful love technique without any hesitation. She remembered the years of hard cultivation, the leaving of the mountain for experience, and clarifying Lu Changsheng's emotional calamity with him. She was acutely aware that all this was her own choice, following her true nature. It's worth it, all of it. Wuxia's eyes were clear, the confusion, retreat, and regret in her heart clearing away. As the supreme forgetful love technique circulated, her beautiful eyes became as cold as the moon. She murmured to herself, I can certainly do it. Her cold and touching voice was very calm. Chapter 284, Yun Wanshang, could something have happened to Shiyu? But it revealed an unwavering determination. With the clarity of her Dao heart, she felt as if her realm had also loosened somewhat. In the following days, Lu Changsheng and Wuxia did not venture out, but continued their cultivation practice within the residence. During these days, under the guidance of Lu Changsheng, Wuxia's practice of the supreme forgetful love technique improved rapidly. She no longer closed her eyes and simply endured his verbal sparring, letting things happen, but would now slightly shyly collaborate a little. Although her proud chest still fluttered when caressed, it no longer caused the supreme forgetful love technique to lose its effect, and gradually she was able to control and restrain this surge of desire. Pitifully, this made things difficult for Lu Chongqing. Initially, Lu Chongqing thought he was merely helping a fairy with her practice, as if helping the future mother of his child. But once he truly assisted, this was not mere fairy cultivation, it was also a cultivation for himself. Thankfully he had his wives in the residence, otherwise, who could withstand it? While Lu Chongqing was practicing with the fairy, at Qingyun sect, Kaiyun Peak, within a magnificent palace, Yun Wanshang was seated, engaged in alchemy. A green jade pill furnace, brimming with vitality and lush greenery, slowly rotated above her head. As a nascent soul immortal, she naturally knew some skills. In terms of alchemy, although not extremely profound, she was also a second-rank alchemist. Coalesce. As she formed hand seals, she sent a spiritual art towards the pill furnace. Elixir medicines flew out one by one from the pill furnace, landing in her hands. Out of 10 elixir medicines, half were dull and scorched, clearly failures. What's wrong with me today? My mental spirit is somewhat restless during alchemy. Could it be that something has happened to Shiyu? Yun Wanshang frowned slightly as she looked at the elixir medicines in her hand. Her first thought was whether her disciple, Xiao Xie, had encountered trouble. But through the soul guide on Xiao Xie's body, she knew that Xiao Xie was not in mortal danger. Immediately, a jade token appeared in her hand. This was an information-transmitting jade token, divided into a pair of master and subordinate tokens. Although it could not convey specific information, during its creation, one could inscribe general information for simple communication. Yun Wanshang used the master and subordinate communication tokens to reach out to Xiao Xie, inquiring about her situation. Within the Lu family residence, in a room of a courtyard, the sound of Walla Walla could be heard. Xiao Xie sat in a bath bucket, her black hair lightly tied up. She scooped up the hot water tinged with flower petals with her delicate hands, gently rubbing away the non-existent saliva mark on her snowy skin. The clear serene beauty on her face was calm, but her eyes that were as bright as the full moon, trembled from time to time, clearly not as tranquil as she appeared. She had thought that after so many days of cultivation, her mental state would have greatly improved, allowing her to control these emotions. Yet, under Lu Changsheng's childlike behavior, her Tao heart was once again challenged. But inside, she did not reject such behavior. Or rather, she did not reject such behavior from Lu Chongqing. She knew that Lu Chongqing was helping her with her cultivation. And the effects of such cultivation methods also made her even more certain that Lu Chongqing was indeed the opportunity and key to her breakthrough. At that moment, Xiao Xie's mental spirit stirred slightly, and with a beckoning gesture, she pulled out a jade token from the nearby storage bag. Seeing the caring message from her master on the jade token warmed Xiao Xie's heart, and a touch of softness appeared in her eyes. She also knew that her master was worried about her discipleship and training outside the mountain, and immediately replied through the jade token, indicating she was well and asked her master to be at ease, not to worry. Although she had things she wanted to say to her own master, the jade token could only convey simple messages. Meanwhile, in Azure Phoenix Immortal City, within a second-order cave mansion, Kaiyun True Immortal's disciple Xiao Xie is out on a solo training expedition. A young man around 27 or 28 years old, dressed in a crimson brocade robe, with a somewhat sinister and cunning face, looked at the message in his hand. Back then, my cheat master went to ambush Yun Wanshang, only to never return. Now they send a message, wanting me to go and ambush this disciple of Kaiyun True Immortal, hee. The corners of the young man's mouth curled up in a cold smirk. However, for the sake of this heavenly pure water, I might as well make a trip. After all, she's just a little qi refinement girl. Moreover, if this girl was taken as a disciple by Yun Wanshang, she must have an exceptional talent. Looking at the self-destructing jade slip in his hand, greed flickered in his eyes as he stepped out of the mansion. Within the Lu family residence. Zing zing zing. In a courtyard, Wuxia played the ancient zither in her white dress and skirt, her demeanor cool and ethereal. The sound of the zither was lingering and extremely beautiful. But to those proficient in rhythm, it was evident that the music was somewhat chaotic. Clearly, the player's heart was not at peace. Sigh. Wuxia stopped playing the zither, sighing deeply. Her stunningly beautiful face momentarily lost in thought with a blush creeping up her cheeks. Just recalling the events of the previous day caused desire to surge uncontrollably within her, and the supreme forgetful love technique began to circulate rapidly. That day, during their cultivation, Lu Chongqing had lifted and slid off her moon-white dress and then. Feelings of shyness, shame, panic, confusion, and palpitations tormented her, a sensation like gnawing bones and scorching hearts, making her tremble and unable to compose herself even now. She felt as if she were ruined. It was nothing like when she did it herself in the past. As a result, she hadn't been able to calm her emotions entirely. And then yesterday. Wuxia looked toward her jade foot wrapped in plain white silk stockings inside her moon-white embroidered shoes. Her eyes, usually cool and indifferent like the bright moon, were now like a lake disturbed by falling drizzle, rippling slightly. Just as Wuxia's emotions were in turmoil and she was about to use the supreme forgetful love technique to calm herself, knock knock knock, a series of knocks sounded at the door. Wuxia knew it was Lu Chongqing. This courtyard was only ever visited by Lu Chongqing. Is it time to start cultivating today? Wuxia felt a tinge of restlessness in her heart, mixed with faint anticipation. Xiao Daoist. Lu Chongqing looked toward Wuxia in front of the zither, who was clad in white, surpassing the snow, resembling the bright moon above or the Guanghan fairy, and called out with a smile. Lu Daoist, you've arrived. Wuxia's expression was cool, yet pleased as she looked toward the young man. She didn't know how Lu Chongqing would cultivate with her today. Xiao Daoist, I'll be away for a while, as there are matters to attend to at Qingzhou Mountain, so I need to make a trip back. Thus, for the upcoming period, it might be inconvenient to cultivate with you, Lu Chongqing said up front to the fairy before him. His trip to Rui County City for the appointment had already been earlier than scheduled. As it had been 1 or 2 months since had been outside, he needed to return home briefly to inform his wives and concubines and to handle affairs at the spiritual talisman shop. Although the days spent cultivating with the fairy brought both pain and pleasure, he couldn't forget his home or neglect his duties. Moreover, the cultivation with the fairy couldn't be completed in a short time, and he couldn't stay with Wuxia here to cultivate at a leisurely pace. Going back. Wuxia nodded at his words. She was aware that Lu Chongqing spent most of his time in the cultivation world, only occasionally visiting the secular realm. That he had stayed for so long in the secular world this time was because of her cultivation matters. You've had a hard time these days, Lu Daoist, Wuxia said softly. You're too courteous, Xiao Daoist. When I return, probably next month, I should be able to come over, Lu Chongqing replied with a smile. Though it was painful and joyful, he had also tasted its sweetness, which he found quite acceptable in his view. I'll go with Lu Daoist. I remember that Red Leaf Valley Market is near Qingzhou Mountain, that way it would be convenient for you to go back and forth, Lu Daoist, instead of the trouble of traveling to and fro. Besides, during this time I've had some insights and want to go see the cultivation world, Wuxia spoke out. She felt indebted for Lu Chongqing's assistance. Alright, since that's the case, let's set off right now, Lu Chongqing felt this would be better and much more convenient upon hearing her words. After all, the trip from Qingzhou Mountain to Red Leaf Valley was only half a day's journey. Spending days in the secular world was not only troublesome with the traveling back and forth but without the spirit vein, it also hindered and affected his cultivation. Wuxia, hearing Lu Chongqing mention setting off right away to handle proper matters, felt an inexplicable hint of slight loss in her heart upon not hearing anything about cultivating together. However, she didn't show this emotion and immediately smoothed over and erased these feelings. She nodded lightly and said, "All right." Immediately, Lu Chongqing informed his wives, concubines, and children and then set off with Xiao Xie, riding flying mounts and leaving Rui County City for Red Leaf Valley Market. Chapter 285, Foundation Establishment Ambush, Treasure Bones Emerge. _1 The vast clear sky was a washed azure blue. A black iron feather eagle and a majestic immortal crane with pure white feathers were soaring swiftly through the air. On the backs of the iron feather eagle and the immortal crane, there stood a handsome young man with a stalwart figure, and a cold-faced, tall, and graceful woman. It was Lu Chongqing and Xiao Xie who had departed from Rui County City and were heading towards the Red Leaf Valley Market. Lu Chongqing, utterly bored, watched Xiao Xie atop the crane, her tall and graceful figure draped in a moon-white dress, standing there like an ethereal fairy. Her cool and detached visage bore the pure aura of the bright moon in the sky, exuding an air of immortality. Beneath the caress of the wind, her long black hair and the hem of her dress fluttered, occasionally revealing a small section of her fair and round jade-like legs. This sight involuntarily caused Lu Chongqing to think back to the moments of her cultivation over the past several days. Indeed, to hold an esteemed and inviolable fairy beneath oneself and indulge as one pleases is the deepest desire hidden in the heart of every man, Lu Chongqing thought to himself, exhaling lightly to suppress the restlessness within his heart. For Xiao Xie, these days were for cultivation. For him, they were likewise a form of cultivation. Fellow Daoist Xiao, in about 2 days, we should reach the Red Leaf Valley Market. Seeing a landmark range of mountains and having a rough idea of their location, Lu Chongqing sent a message to Xiao Xie. "Good," Xiao Xie replied. Whether she was in the state of cultivation or not, she was usually not very talkative, somewhat reticent. However, if a topic was brought up to her, Xiao Xie would always respond. Like during these days, Lu Chongqing had asked Xiao Xie numerous questions. Even to some of the more personal questions, she would answer. The iron feather eagle and the immortal crane continued to glide rapidly through the air. Just then, "Be careful!" Xiao Xie suddenly exclaimed. She abruptly turned her gaze to the right where an ancient chain appeared in her hands. Alerted by her exclamation, Lu Chongqing quickly turned and looked in the same direction. He immediately saw a stream of rainbow light slashing through the sky far away, speeding directly toward them. The little girl is not simple, indeed, to have detected my presence. Truly worthy of being a disciple of Kaiyun true immortal. In the next moment, the rainbow light appeared mere zhongs away from the two. A man in his late 20s, with a sinister, effeminate face and dressed in a crimson brocade robe, materialized. Standing on a black cloud, he radiated a powerful aura of spirit pressure. It caused Lu Chongqing's iron feather eagle below him to flap its wings frantically and shiver in fear. A Foundation Establishment Cultivator. Lu Chongqing's pupils shrank, and his gaze narrowed slightly. From the man's speed and the spirit pressure he emitted, Lu Chongqing immediately knew he was faced with a Foundation Establishment Great Cultivator. And from the look of it, this Foundation Establishment Great Cultivator bore no good intentions. "Senior recognizes my master, is there something you require?" Xiao Xie looked toward the young man and spoke. Her fair hand rested on the chain, poised and ready to strike, clearly perceiving the ill intentions of their adversary. "I am here for you this time. As for the reason, you shall know in a moment," the man in the crimson robe spoke as he stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes revealing a glint of dark red light. As soon as he finished speaking, a mass of dark red murderous aura appeared beside him, transforming into the head of a ferocious python and roaring as it lunged toward Xiao Xie. Clang! Xiao Xie, prepared for such an event, plucked a string on the chain, and a resonant sound arose, followed by a gust of wind. It was clear to see ripples of sound waves emanating from Xiao Xie at the center, rolling out like a series of circular blades and crushing the murderous python with their force. But the next moment, the shattered murderous python, like mist, reassembled and continued its ferocious onslaught. Realizing the situation, Wuxia understood that this foundation-building great cultivator was an enemy, not a friend. Even with her exceptional talent, she stood no chance against a foundation establishment great cultivator. Especially since this great cultivator was evidently no ordinary one. Immediately, she took out a second-rank, ice blue talisman from her storage bag and activated it swiftly. A terrible frost and cold wind arose as if intending to freeze the heavens and earth, aiming to encase the murderous python in ice and form a giant wall of ice. Go! Wuxia didn't linger, immediately shouting to Lu Chongqing. Without hesitation, she retracted the immortal crane into her spiritual pet bag and conjured a cloud veil. Her graceful figure in white dress alighted on the cloud veil, reached out to Lu Chongqing beside her, and brought him onto the cloud veil. Together, they turned into a beam of escape light, attempting to flee. You think you can escape? The man in the crimson robe watched this unfold, his lips curling up in a slight smile, his voice filled with contempt and disdain. He, a foundation establishment great cultivator, set on interdicting a mere chi refinement miner, couldn't possibly let them get away. Even with the addition of Lu Chongqing, it only meant another chi refinement cultivator, hardly worth his concern. Scowl! The man in the crimson robe formed hand seals and shouted coldly. Suddenly, his life-bound spiritual artifact, the red phoenix pearl, flew out from his dantian and hovered above his head, radiating a red glow. A beam of light shot out, casting a red glow that caused the figure of Wuxia, maneuvering the cloud veil to escape, to stiffen abruptly. Immediately after, a chilling white flying sword appeared out of nowhere, its sword chi roiling and sharpness menacing, making a beeline for Wuxia. Not good. Realizing the imminent threat of the flying sword, Wuxia knew escape was likely impossible. Quickly, she slapped her storage bag and summoned a 5-color tortoise shell. The tortoise shell shot into the air, unfolding a 5-colored radiance while exuding an aura of impregnable defense. Then, a colorful sword bead appeared. The sword bead spun wildly, surrounded by terrifying sword light, seeming capable of slicing through everything. Go! Wuxia formed hand seals and shouted crisply, propelling the sword bead viciously towards the man in the crimson robe. Chapter 286, Foundation Establishment Ambush, Treasure Bones Emerge. Lu Chongqing was slightly taken aback by Wuxia's decisive actions and strategies in combat. He hadn't expected Wuxia to be so resolute, possessing such fighting techniques. She didn't seem like someone who was experiencing her first time outside for training at all. He couldn't help thinking to himself that the disciples taught within the Immortal sects were truly different. They didn't just know how to cultivate, in terms of combat techniques, they were completely superior to many ordinary loose cultivators. Furthermore, looking at the cloud veil, tortoise shell, and sword bead, which were obviously of superior and top-grade magic artifacts, she seemed to be very wealthy. Despite his astonishment, Lu Chongqing didn't just stand by and do nothing. He took out a stack of talismans, all of middle and superior grade, and threw out more than a dozen in one go. After all, as a talisman master, it was only natural for him to carry extra talismans for self-defense. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the talismans emitted a diffuse light, turning into streams of fire clouds, fire serpents, ice spikes, wind blades, and lightning, bursting forth wildly. Clang clang clang. The stark white flying sword struck against the 5-colored tortoise shell, the swords vibrating, and the tide-like sword chi roaring tumultuously, as if to shred to pieces anyone it touched, causing faint cracks to appear on the tortoise shell. As for the onslaught of the colorful sword beads and talismans, the young man in the red robe just let out a disdainful sneer. He lifted his right hand, crystal clear like jade and shimmering with a demonic luster, and directly grasped the sword bead. Crack, crack, the sharp sword beads made a teeth-grating crack sound against the crystal-like jade palm. A murderous python bursting with sinister chi leapt from his shoulder, directly neutralizing and shattering Lu Chongqing's talisman's offensive. This is definitely not an ordinary foundation-building great cultivator. Seeing this scene, Lu Changsheng's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't say much about his own stack of talisman attacks. It was quite normal for them to be neutralized, being merely middle and superior grade talismans. But Xiao Xia's tortoise shell and sword bead were clearly not simple. Yet, under the techniques of this young man in the red robe, the tortoise shell cracked, and the sword bead was even pinched in his hand. Although the young man's palm seemed to use some kind of spell, it still made him very alarmed. He knew that the strength of this young man in the red robe was not that of an ordinary foundation-building great cultivator. His power far exceeded the Lu family ancestor, Chen family ancestor, Bai family ancestor, and Meng Xiaochan that he had encountered before. Humph. Xiao Xia's countenance paled slightly as the two artifacts she summoned were broken, and she let out a muffled groan. She took out a silver talisman from her storage bag and handed it to Lu Chongqing. She quickly transmitted her voice, Lu Daoist, this matter started because of me. He must be tracking me through some kind of technique. This is a second-rank escape talisman. It'll hold him off for a moment. You can use the talisman to escape from here, Xiao Xia said urgently. Practicing the supreme forgetful love technique helped her keep her mind calm even in the face of various crises. She knew that the young man in the red robe, a foundation-building great cultivator, was after her. This kind of encounter was certainly no coincidence. It was highly likely that the opponent possessed some secret technique that could find her. Thus, in this situation, it was extremely difficult for her to escape from the hands of a foundation-building great cultivator. She also didn't want to get Lu Chongqing involved at this time. Lu Chongqing did not take the talisman. He had such second-rank escape talismans himself. If he had wanted to escape, he could have used the talisman to do so during the first opportunity in the gap between their fights. But faced with this situation, leaving Xiao Xia behind and escaping alone was something he found rather difficult to do. Sigh, with this kind of nature, I'm really not suited for the cultivation world, for these times, he thought to himself. However, after tasting both the sweet and the savory, and she being the future mother of my children, I can't just stand by and do nothing, Lu Chongqing sighed softly in his heart. He decided to fight back fiercely and see if he could save Xiao Xia. His boldness wasn't completely ungrounded. He had a certain confidence. He felt that if he truly gave it his all, he could take down a foundation-building enemy. Though this particular foundation builder was somewhat strong. Moreover, even if he was no match, he had the life-substituting talisman on him to cling to life. In the blink of an eye, with thoughts flashing through his mind, Lu Chongqing made a decision, his palms subtly retracting into his sleeves. One hand held a talisman, the other gripped a talisman treasure emitting golden light. Hurry up, Xiao Xia pressed, looking at Lu Chongqing with some anxiety. She urged him to take the talisman and escape quickly. Xiao Daoist, under these circumstances, how could I abandon you and leave? Lu Chongqing responded with a light chuckle. At a time like this, still indulging in romantic sentiment. But make no mistake, you two are doomed not to become lovebirds on the run. The young man in the red robe's eyes flashed fiercely as he abruptly exclaimed. In a pair of deep-set eyes, a crimson light glowed, striking fear into the heart. The next instant, Lu Changsheng's brow peach blossom goo roared furiously. It felt as if his brain had been hammered by something, his head dizzying, which made him let out a muffled groan. The pendant artifact he wore on his neck emitted a cool breeze at that moment. Pfft! Xiao Xia, on the other hand, turned deathly pale at the instant, and suddenly spurted a mouthful of fresh blood, clutching her white forehead. Ha! You brat can actually withstand my divine sense attack. The young man in the red robe was quite surprised seeing this scene. He never expected that under his divine consciousness secret technique, Lu Chongqing would remain unscathed, merely grunting. He knew that ordinary cultivators affected by his divine sense attack either fell immediately or ended up like Xiao Xia. Additionally, he could tell that Lu Changxing was not a foundation establishment cultivator. He was likely just an energy refining cultivator. For a minor energy refiner to withstand his divine consciousness secret technique indicated the possession of some kind of protective treasure for the sea of consciousness. That made his eyes gleam with greed. Chapter 287, Foundation Establishment Ambush, Treasure Bones Emerge. After all, treasures that can protect the sea of consciousness are all highly cherished. No matter what treasure you have, it's all mine now. The red-robed youth laughed heartily, his palm closing as the red phoenix pearl hovering above his head radiated a dazzling light, shining towards Lu Changxing and Xiao Xia. The ghostly white little sword broke through the five-colored tortoise shell and, with a whoosh, charged towards Lu Changxing. The brilliance from the red phoenix pearl caused Lu Changxing's figure to suddenly stiffen, feeling as if his surroundings were sealed off and his spiritual power flowing sluggishly within him. He knew this was the gap between the realms of Qi refinement and foundation establishment. Not daring to hold back any longer, he slapped his storage bag. Suddenly, a 2-meter-tall metal puppet appeared in front of him, its body pitch black, wielding a knife in one hand, a shield in the other, and carrying 5 dark javelins on its back. It was the second-rank puppet he had forged, which had been lying dormant in his storage bag gathering dust. Clang! Facing the ghostly white flying sword, the metal puppet stepped forward, shield at the ready, creating a metallic clang and sparks flying in all directions. Immediately after, the black-gold long knife in the puppet's hand fiercely swung out, mighty and unyielding, striking the ghostly white flying sword with another deafening clang. You also have a second-rank puppet? Seems like you're not as simple as you look, kid. The red-robed youth watched this scene, chuckled lightly, still appearing nonchalant and unconcerned. But the next moment, a talisman treasure. He saw that in Lu Changxing's hands, an aura was spreading. A golden, rectangular object shot out, rapidly enlarging in the air, shining brightly, causing his expression to change subtly. Even as a foundation-building great cultivator, facing a talisman treasure like this, he felt a bit troubled. It seems you really aren't simple, kid. Since that's the case, then go to your death. The red-robed youth, seeing that Lu Changxing had both a second-rank puppet and a talisman treasure, dropped the cat-and-mouse attitude. His hands formed a spiritual art, and one by one, evil pythons appeared, their momentum fierce as they charged towards Lu Changxing, prepared for a quick battle. Xiao Xia, with a pale face and blood spilling from her mouth, was astonished by Lu Changxing's actions. Her beautiful face showed disbelief. Having been in close contact for so long, she naturally realized that Lu Changxing was not as simple as he appeared on the surface. He surely had hidden his abilities, his secrets. As for this, she did not question or care about it too much. After all, which cultivator does not have some fortune and secrets on them? But she never would have guessed that Lu Changxing had hidden his powers so deeply, producing a second-rank puppet and a talisman treasure unexpectedly. Especially when Lu Changxing activated the talisman treasure, with the aura of spiritual power surging around his body. It allowed her to approximately perceive that Lu Changxing's cultivation level and strength must be the same as hers, at Qi refinement perfection. However, seeing that Lu Changxing had such strength and measures to escape on his own, yet chose to fight by revealing himself in order to save her, it made her heart flutter, spawning an inexplicable emotion. But at this moment, she did not pay attention to this feeling, taking out a golden talisman paper from her storage bag. Buzz buzz buzz. Xiao Xia stimulated the talisman paper with her spiritual power, causing a small golden sword to appear, emitting a terrifying might. This turned out to also be a talisman treasure. Ha! Another talisman treasure. The red-robed youth saw this, his eyes flickered, and his expression darkened. Before he acted, he had guessed that these Qi refinement juniors would certainly have treasures to defend themselves. But he did not expect that there would be this additional complication. 2 Qi refinement juniors, each possessing a talisman treasure. But they are just two chi refinement juniors, even with talisman treasures, how can they unleash their full power? The red-robed youth scoffed, smacked his belt, and a set of black armor appeared, which he put on. After all, even though it was just talk, the unleashed power of two talisman treasures could potentially injure him if he was careless. Roar, roar, roar. Meanwhile, the 9 evil pythons had already furiously charged right in front of Lu Chongqing. Lu Chongqing was fully focused on activating the golden brick talisman treasure when he saw this sight, his fingers squeezing an activated supreme talisman, a thunder talisman. At this moment, as he activated the golden brick talisman treasure and controlled the second-rank puppet, he found it difficult to use another second-rank talisman. Under his puppet control technique, the second-rank puppet, which was clashing head-on with the ghostly white flying sword, suddenly had all 5 javelins on its back shoot up into the sky. Swoosh, 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 like thunder and lightning, they turned into 5 black bolts of lightning, and together they rushed toward the 9-headed evil python, fiercely and powerfully. Boom, boom, boom. Every one of the 5 javelins, each as powerful as a strike from someone of the Foundation establishment stage, collided with the 9-headed evil python, causing an explosive booming noise. But during this collision, Lu Chongqing could distinctly feel that the middle-grade spirit stones within the puppet's core were being rapidly consumed, unable to keep up with the onslaught of the enemy's attacks. We must end this battle quickly. Lu Chongqing also knew that in this situation, his side could not afford to drag the fight out. Every casual attack from his opponent forced him to use all his techniques. Looking up at the sky, where the golden brick now resembled a small mountain, Lu Chongqing's mind shifted slightly. He poured his entire mental spirit and spiritual power into controlling the talisman treasure. Boom! The mountainous, radiant golden brick, with its heavy and pure aura, plummeted down towards the red-robed youth. Chi! Faced with the surging momentum of the falling golden brick, the youth dared not underestimate it and let out a low shout. The red phoenix pearl above his head spun rapidly, radiating intense red light, making the surroundings appear as if engulfed by a blazing cloud, rising to meet the golden brick bearing down like a formidable mountain. Rumble, rumble. The two treasures collided, their might surging, locking the golden and red light in a standoff mid-air. And at that moment, Xiao Xia's talisman treasure, the golden little sword, also burst forth. This little golden sword, nearly pushed to its limit by Xiao Xia, displayed an incredible might and suddenly closed in on the red-robed youth. Chapter 288, Foundation Establishment Ambush, Treasure Bones Emerge. For the youth was combating the golden talisman treasure brick when he saw the small sword coming to kill him. He slapped his hand, and a puppet in the form of a tiger appeared. Pfft! In just a moment, the golden small sword pierced through the tiger puppet, shattering its core. But in that instant, the youth wielded a pair of blood-colored scissors from his hand, which transformed into a blood-colored flood dragon, colliding with the golden small sword. Clang, clang, clang. The golden small sword and the blood-colored flood dragon continuously clashed. At this moment, the youth in the red robe was somewhat strained facing the second-rank puppet and 2 talisman treasures. He saw that Xiao Xia was already at the end of her tether. Under the initial offensive and divine sense attack, her mental spirit had already been damaged. Now, as she desperately stimulated the talisman treasures, both her mental spirit and mana were barely holding on. He prepared to deal with Xiao Xia first, then handle Lu Chongqing. With a flicker of his mental spirit, the sin-white flying sword entangled with the second-rank puppet suddenly turned and charged towards Xiao Xia. Daoist Xiao, be careful. Lu Chongqing, upon seeing this, immediately shouted. He took control of the second-rank puppet to intercept the flying sword. However, after the 9-headed evil python was shattered, it regrouped, indomitable, forcing the puppet to block its way. Pfft! Xiao Xia's complexion turned pale as she saw the small sword coming to kill her. She bit her silver teeth, spitting fresh blood onto her ancient zither. Twang! Immediately, the ancient zither soared into the sky, its blood-stained strings plucked autonomously, emitting a sound like that of warhorses and ironclad soldiers, as wave after wave of sound wave blades were unleashed. Clang clang clang. The sin-white flying sword collided with the ancient zither, making Xiao Xie's face even paler. Daoist Lu, you must go quickly. Xiao Xie said aloud. She could see that even if Lu Chongqing was hiding his strength, possessing a second-rank puppet and talisman treasures, this Foundation establishment great cultivator was not an ordinary one. They were no match for him. If they persisted, both of them would die here. After speaking, she fully stimulated her mental spirit and spiritual power, propelling the golden small sword to create an opportunity for Lu Chongqing. The sword emitted bursts of golden light around itself, and with a fierce slash, it cut a deep gash in the body of the blood-colored flood dragon, causing the spiritual artifact to revert to a blood-colored pair of scissors and fall from the sky. At that moment, the golden small sword also dimmed considerably but still charged towards the youth in the red robe. Humph! The youth in the red robe, seeing his spiritual artifact damaged, let out a cold snort and formed a hand seal. Black armor around him surged with a ghostly light, and at the same time, the blood-colored scissors flew up again, transforming into a blood-colored flood dragon, colliding with the golden small sword. But at this moment, the blood-colored flood dragon was clearly much dimmer than before. Lu Chongqing, watching this scene, also had an estimate of the youth in the red robe's strength. He knew the latter was also running low on strength. He propelled the talisman treasure golden brick with all his might while controlling the second-rank puppet to attack the youth in the red robe. The treasure bones in his chest were poised and ready. This was his last trump card. Damn it! The youth in the red robe, seeing the puppet coming to kill, also looked somewhat sullen and ugly. Lu Chongqing and Xiao Xie, although both were in the stage of qi refinement, summoned talisman treasures with incredibly astonishing power. Especially the golden light brick, which completely entangled his life-bound spiritual artifact, crazily draining the mana within his body. He gritted his teeth, formed a hand seal with both hands, and slapped his chest to use a secret technique. It allowed him, under such circumstances, to split a part of his mental spirit and mana to control his magic artifact. Clang clang clang. Immediately, a purple bell magic artifact appeared, gently swaying in the void and emitting a series of soul-stirring sounds. This sound made both Lu Chongqing and Xiao Xie unable to help but feel dazed, somewhat dizzy and swollen-headed. The young man clearly saw that both were fully controlling the talisman treasure, thus expending a great deal of their mental spirit. A disturbance would inevitably lead to an opening. Pfft! The second-rank puppet reached the young man in the red robe, and the black gold long knife in its hand slashed out explosively. The young man wasn't a body cultivator, so naturally he wouldn't forcibly resist such a close-range attack. An armor surrounded by dim light materialized a ghostly shield in front of him, blocking the strike. The purple bell continued to ding, unsettling the mind, causing Xiao Xie, who was barely holding on, to completely faint. Now's the moment. Lu Changsheng's eyes flashed fiercely, knowing that the young man in the red robe had also reached his limit. Now, without Xiao Xie's help, he couldn't delay any longer. If the opponent had the chance to recover, there would be no opportunity. He immediately patted the spiritual pet bag and summoned the six-winged golden silkworm. This six-winged golden silkworm had been raised for almost 2 years now. But regardless of its size or appearance, there was no difference from when he first obtained it. It was still in the larval stage. However, at this moment, as long as it could be of use, that was enough. Lu Chongqing had the six-winged golden silkworm prepare in secret. Then, while putting all his strength into stimulating the golden light brick, he unleashed the treasure bones that he had nourished for many years with the black dragon magical bead. Roar roar roar, in an instant, dragon roars resonated through the void. Straight from Lu Changsheng's chest, a tide of dark light spread unceasingly, like a rolling river with surging waves, emitting a terrifyingly powerful aura. What kind of technique is this, and how does it have the aura of core formation? And how can this youngster, with only chi refinement strength, having already stimulated one talisman treasure, still unleash such a powerful technique? The young man in the red robe screamed, somewhat panicked. Boom! The next moment, from Lu Changsheng's chest emerged a flood dragon enveloped in glistening black light and shrouded in black mist, giving off a bizarre and evil roar as it emerged. What on earth is this technique? This youngster is clearly just a minor chi refinement cultivator. The young man in the red robe stared at the menacing, roaring flood dragon, his expression also becoming somewhat vacant. Not understanding what was happening before his eyes. Why, while fully controlling a talisman treasure, could he still unleash a technique with a forceful presence not weaker than that of a foundation establishment aura? Roar, roar, roar. Before he could think further, the rolling black mist and the roaring evil spirit of the flood dragon made the young man in the red robe feel his body sluggish and the spiritual light in his mental spirit dim. The black dragon magical bead, upon initial activation, burst forth with black light capable of suppressing the flesh and corrupting the soul. This spirit of the evil flood dragon naturally possessed such an effect. The young man, already in a state of deadlock, couldn't withstand the soul of the evil flood dragon at all and was directly engulfed and devoured by the approaching black mist. Chapter 289, 100,000 Spirit Stones, The Change in Wuxia. _1 Rumble. The evil Zhao's soul engulfed and drowned the young man in the red robe, a terrifying radiance filled the void, causing the entire space to boom and explode. Oh, a shrill scream sounded amidst the waves. Huff! This strike, lit by the explosive energy of the treasure bones, also made Lu Changsheng's face somewhat pale, with a faint pain in his chest. Through the red bead that had clashed hard against the golden light brick, he knew that the young man in red was not yet completely dead. Go! Lu Changsheng issued an order to the six-winged golden silkworm, lest the opponent still had some strength left. At the same time, he continued to control the golden light brick with his mental spirit. At this moment, he could clearly feel the might of the red bead resisting the golden light brick had greatly diminished, falling steadily. This indicated the dire situation of the young man in red, who was unable to resist. Boom! 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 As the golden light brick continued suppressing the red phoenix pearl, a blood-red light burst out from the soul of the evil Zhao. It was indeed the young man in red. By now his black armor was ragged, his hair disheveled, his appearance was utterly wretched. Ah, you wait for me, this grudge, the young man in red ranted bitterly, attempting to escape using a secret technique. But before he could finish speaking, the hovering golden light brick came crashing down like a mountain. Puff! Simultaneously, a golden line shot out like an arrow, piercing his forehead, leaving a bloody hole. It was the six-winged golden silkworm. The next moment, the golden light brick also thundered down, pressing both the red phoenix pearl and the young man in red toward the ground below. Upon seeing this, Lu Changsheng embraced Wuxia's delicate body and, piloting the flying artifact, descended swiftly. Rumble! With a thunderous roar, the golden light brick pinned the young man directly onto the mountainous terrain, causing the ground to shake. Phew! Truly fitting for a foundation establishment great cultivator, so hard to kill. The treasure bones I've nurtured for years are not the least bit weaker than a full force strike from a talisman treasure, yet he almost got away. Lu Changsheng could sense that the opponent's vitality had nearly extinguished with the six-winged golden silkworm strike. But just to be safe, he had followed up with a blow from the golden light brick. Through the golden light brick, he could detect that the young man in red pinned underneath was thoroughly devoid of life. However, to be on the safe side, Lu Changsheng still took out 3 superior grade talismans and 1 supreme talisman, setting them up around the golden light brick. After he finished, Lu Changsheng slightly stirred his mental spirit, allowing the golden light brick to rise slowly. Upon seeing the mangled corpse within the large pit, Lu Changsheng finally felt at ease. He retracted the golden light that had engulfed the brick, which had become as large as a small hill, and watched it shrink, reverting to the form of a talisman and flying back into his hand. But now, this talisman treasure was quite dim, its paper even appearing somewhat damaged. This talisman treasure is probably going to be completely scrapped after one more use. Lu Chongqing looked at the dim golden light brick talisman treasure in his hand and mused inwardly. This talisman treasure had been used by him multiple times, already depleting much of its power. The recent battle, though brief, had been greatly taxing due to his full-powered activation. If this Foundation establishment great cultivator was a pauper, then this would be quite the loss for me. Lu Chongqing gazed into the large crater made by the golden light brick, at the torn body within it, and exhaled lightly. However, the likelihood of this was slim. The red bead, the pale white sword, and the blood-colored scissors alone were of considerable value. Lu Chongqing did not ponder long to avoid drawing others to the site of the recent battle. He embraced Xiao Xie's tender body, collected the young man in red's mangled corpse, and quickly gathered the scattered treasures around before swiftly departing. After an hour, Lu Chongqing found a cave in the mountain range. He gently placed Xiao Xie down inside. From his storage bag, he took out the Heavenly Canopy 5 Elements formation and set it up. This formation had the effects of trapping enemies and isolating aura, very practical, and was always on Lu Chongqing's person. After setting up the formation, Lu Chongqing took a recovery elixir medicine from the storage bag and used a healing talisman on him, which made him feel much better. He then checked Xiao Xie's condition. She seemed to have just suffered damage to her mental spirit and had overconsumed her spiritual power, nothing too serious. After making a preliminary assessment, Lu Chongqing passed a healing pill into her lips. He then applied another healing talisman to her. He immediately saw her pale complexion improve considerably. The biggest difference between the Qi refinement realm and the Foundation establishment stage, aside from the qualitative change in spiritual power and mana, is divine sense. Foundation establishment cultivators give birth to divine sense, which affords great convenience in both combat and cultivation. If it weren't for the peach blossom goo shielding me from divine sense attacks, I fear I would have suffered damage to my mental spirit just like Xiao Xie. Lu Chongqing looked at Xiao Xie's form and realized the most undefendable aspect of encountering Foundation establishment while being in the Qi refinement stage. Even if you have a magic artifact, defending against divine sense attacks is almost impossible. If he didn't possess the peach blossom goo, he might have been affected as well. Nevertheless, it was only now that Lu Chongqing discovered the peach blossom goo had this effect. Immediately, he closed his eyes to introspect, inspecting the condition of the peach blossom goo between his eyebrows. Though it seemed somewhat lishless, it wasn't of much concern. This was normal. After all, it was a divine spirit goo. And the growth of the peach blossom goo was remarkably fast. Under his flourishing peach blossom luck, it had grown to the extreme limit of the first transformation. If his cultivation level did not restrict it, it could have advanced to the second transformation. Seeing that Xiao Xie wouldn't awaken anytime soon, Lu Chongqing stripped the storage bag and storage belt from the young man in red. He began sorting through the spoils of the battle. I hope they yield a substantial return. Lu Chongqing looked at the storage belt and storage bag with a hint of anticipation. Chapter 290, 100,000 Spirit Stones, The Change in Xiao Xie. After all, the young man in the red robe didn't seem like an ordinary Foundation establishment cultivator. One would think he couldn't be too poor. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, the six-winged golden silkworm was flying around Lu Chongqing. Its wings, thin as cicadas, fluttered, emitting a bloodthirsty aura. Go ahead. Lu Chongqing naturally understood what the six-winged golden silkworm meant and chuckled lightly. He hadn't burned the young man in the red robe to ashes, precisely to leave the body for the six-winged golden silkworm. After all, this six-winged golden silkworm fed on blood. To it, the blood essence of a foundation establishment great cultivator like the young man in the red robe was naturally a great tonic. Having received Lu Changsheng's permission, the six-winged golden silkworm immediately burrowed into the young man's body and began to feast greedily. Isn't this a bit too much like the practices of the demonic path? Lu Changsheng watched the actions of the six-winged golden silkworm and smacked his lips. Very soon, he shook his head and said, "But it's just resource utilization after all. If I didn't feed it to the six-winged golden silkworm, I'd have to burn it to ashes. Besides, this is far from what the demon path cultivators do. I read in a book before that some demonic path cultivators use any resource they can for cultivation, be it humans, demon beasts, or the souls of all living beings. Things like human skin books, white bone arrows, pools of blood and flesh, myriad soul banners, and even human emotions like joy, anger, and hatred can be used for cultivation." Lu Changsheng clicked his tongue in amazement. He had roughly read about the differences between the righteous path and the demonic path in books before. Although the descriptions weren't very detailed, he had a general idea. Demonic path cultivators are more extreme in their cultivation techniques and behaviors, showing less humanity for the sake of advancement. This consequently leads to some differences in the speed of cultivation and breaking through realms. But on the whole, there isn't much difference between cultivators of the righteous path and those of the demonic path. My cheap brother-in-law seems to have followed the demonic path, and I have no idea about his current situation or if he's still alive. Lu Changsheng suddenly remembered Chu Zhenshen's brother, Chu Changge. After all these years, he wondered how his cheap brother-in-law, who had entered the demonic path, was faring. After all, life wasn't easy for demonic path cultivators in Jiang country. Without further musing, Lu Changsheng began to check the storage bag. So many spirit stones, materials. Lu Changsheng immediately saw a pile of spirit stones and materials inside, and his face lit up with surprise. Even without counting in detail, he could tell at a glance that this was no small number of spirit stones. Among them were many lustrous middle-grade spirit stones. What's this? Lu Changsheng then looked at a crystal porcelain bottle. Inside was half a bottle of red crystal granules, resplendent like glazed glass. Just by the quality of the exquisite spirit bottle and the appearance of the crystals, Lu Changsheng could tell they were no mundane objects. Opening the porcelain bottle, he immediately felt an intense, scorching energy. Each grain of crystal shone with a precious light. Could this be something like the core formation spiritual object, heavenly fire glaze, as recorded in the books? If this thing really is the core formation spiritual object, heavenly fire glaze, then its value is at least 50 to 60,000 spirit stones. Lu Changsheng looked at the crystal porcelain bottle, his face filled with a smile, and he put it into his storage bag. A regular foundation establishment spiritual object might cost 2 to 3,000 spirit stones. But for a core formation spiritual object, the price increases 20-fold. And they are priceless on the market. Lu Changsheng continued his inventory. Seeing ordinary materials and magic artifacts didn't stir much emotion in him. Red Phoenix True Scripture, a peripheral sect-level cultivation technique. Seems like there's something worthwhile after all, to possess a peripheral sect-level cultivation technique. However, the technique is incomplete, only cultivable to the core formation stage, but I can study the 2 secret techniques recorded inside later. Lu Changsheng found several technique jade slips in the storage bag. After a brief glance, there were several high-grade cultivation techniques and the inheritance of 100 arts of cultivation. Only the Red Phoenix True Scripture notably piqued Lu Changsheng's interest. Is this a magic treasure embryo? Lu Changsheng saw a small black-red cauldron among the items, examining it in his hand. This small cauldron had only a rough outline of a cauldron shape. Neither the design nor the patterns were sculpted yet, resembling an unrefined embryo. But from inspecting the material of the small cauldron and the aura it emitted, even the worldly Lu Changsheng faintly sensed that this was a magic treasure. This kind of appearance made Lu Chongqing guess it was a magical treasure embryo. As far as Lu Chongqing knew, most cultivators' life-bound magic treasures are made from some rare and precious materials, which they refine themselves. They then shape it into an embryo, and gradually nurture and imbue it into a fledgling form, eventually turning it into a magic treasure. This has an advantage, as one could control the fledgling form of the magic treasure in the late stage of foundation establishment. And by nurturing the magic treasure embryo well in advance, one could let the magic treasure take shape immediately upon reaching core formation, significantly increasing its power. Could it be that this young man in the red robe is a cultivator in the late stage of foundation establishment? Otherwise, why would he have core formation spiritual objects and a magical treasure embryo? Lu Chongqing glanced at the corpse that was being drained of blood by the six-winged golden silkworm and speculated. After all, how could an ordinary foundation establishment cultivator have such rare items? However, sifting through the spoils made Lu Chongqing somewhat relieved. For he had also found in the red-robed young man's storage bag 6 pieces of supreme talismans of the second rank, as well as heavenly thunder pearls, white bone arrows, and other treasures. It became clear that the latter actually had quite a few trump cards. If he had made a determined attempt to take their lives from the beginning of their encounter with him and Xiao Xie, neither she nor Lu Chongqing would have had the chance to retaliate. There wouldn't have been any time to employ talisman treasures to suppress him. The same principle applies, even when a lion hunts a rabbit, it uses all its strength, Lu Chongqing thought to himself. Otherwise, one might capsize in the gutter unexpectedly. Chapter 291, 100,000 Spirit Stones, The Change in Xiao Xie. Lu Chongqing shook his head slightly, feeling a sigh. He stored the small cauldron away and continued the cleanup. Even if the cauldron was a magical treasure embryo, it wasn't of much use to him. It was merely a piece of valuable material. Besides possibly selling it in the future, it could also be used to cultivate the 100 refinements treasure body art. After all, a magical treasure embryo still counted as a magical treasure. It could be refined into his body. The cleaning process that followed didn't reveal any high-value items to surprise Lu Chongqing. 128 middle-grade spirit stones. 3,894 lower-grade spirit stones. 1 suspected core formation spiritual object, 1 foundation establishment spiritual object. 1 magical treasure embryo, for spiritual artifacts, but one of them is worn, 1 is severely damaged, essentially scrapped, only suitable as waste material for the cultivation of the 100 refinements treasure body art. 2 superior magic artifacts, 3 ultimate magic artifacts, 1 flying boat, 1 heavenly thunder pearl, 1 first-grade lifespan extension pill, plus this pile of elixir medicines, talismans, and materials. The total value is over 100,000 spirit stones, right? After clearing everything up, Lu Chongqing took a deep breath while looking at this batch of spoils, and after roughly calculating their value, he exhaled long and deep. This batch of spoils was indeed the greatest haul he had ever had. The biggest gain he achieved previously was the Ko family's 5 vicious beasts, and that was just over 10,000 spirit stones when added to Meng Xiaoquan's 2 foundation establishment spiritual objects. But now, the lone red-robed youth's spoils directly approached an enormous sum of 100,000. This wealth made Lu Chongqing even more aware that this person was far from ordinary. From the earlier situation, he must have been targeting Xiao Xie, seeking to capture her alive. Lu Chongqing looked at the still unconscious Xiao Xie, smacking his lips. He felt the matter was far from simple. Keep in mind, Xiao Xie is a disciple of a nascent soul immortal from Qingyun sect. Now a foundation establishment great cultivator, knowing Xiao Xie's identity, still came to seize her, which made him feel the situation was complicated. Alas, the more entanglements there are, the greater the cause and effect. Lu Chongqing shook his head, packed away the items, and took out 7 middle-grade spirit stones to recharge his puppet. In the recent battle, this second-rank puppet hadn't suffered any damage. But the consumption of spirit stones was vast, nearly 7 out of the 10 stones had been used up. After returning this time, if I have the time, I could also create a few more puppets, Lu Chongqing thought to himself. Even the materials he had obtained were almost enough to create another second-rank puppet. But the next moment, Lu Chongqing shook his head. The urgent matter at hand is cultivation, otherwise, with my current mental spirit, even if I had several puppets, I wouldn't be able to control them simultaneously. During the recent battle, Lu Chongqing had also realized his shortcomings in this area. Operating a single puppet had already reached a limit during combat. If he were to control multiple puppets at the same time, it would be difficult to concentrate on other tasks. Most cultivation techniques for mental spirit require the emergence of divine sense first. It's not something that can be rushed, unless the system can draw a relevant cultivation technique for this aspect. Lu Chongqing let out a sigh, grabbing 2 lower-grade spirit stones and began to sit in meditation for healing and recovery. The next day, Lu Chongqing glanced at the still unconscious Xiao Xie. Seeing the effects of the healing talisman on her nearly dissipated, he took out another and used it. As the talisman flowed through Xiao Xie's body like dew from a lotus, she let out a soft moan and woke up. "Xiao Daoist, have you awoken?" Upon seeing Xiao Xie waking up, Lu Chongqing immediately inquired with concern. "Lu Daoist, where are we, and where's the robber cultivator?" Xiao Xie sat up, looked around the crude cave, and asked. She didn't know if they had escaped or if she had been imprisoned by the red-robed youth. Under the power of our 2 talisman treasures, that robber cultivator was also at his limit. I, Lu, had no choice but to play my last card and barely managed to slay him, Lu Chongqing sighed, his words tinged with a mix of distress and relief. As he spoke, he returned Xiao Xie's tortoise shell, sword bead, cloud veil, and talisman treasures. He might be avaricious, but not to the extent of coveting these few things from the mother of his child. "You actually slew him?" Xiao Xie was somewhat incredulous. From their brief encounter before, she understood that the red-robed youth was not an ordinary Foundation establishment cultivator. He was at least at the middle stage of Foundation establishment. She and Lu Chongqing might have suppressed him with the help of the talisman treasure. But suppression and slaying were entirely different concepts. She was stunned for a moment. Then, her somewhat pale face broke into a smile that was unlike her usual cold demeanor, blooming like a snow lotus. "I didn't expect Lu Daoist to have hidden so deeply." She knew Lu Chongqing had secrets. But upon seeing the second-rank puppet, talisman treasure, and Lu Chongqing's cultivation level, she had already been amazed. Now, hearing that Lu Chongqing had slain the red-robed youth, her view of him was completely altered. Seeing Lu Chongqing slightly frown, Xiao Xie seemed to realize something, her lips lightly pursed as she said, "Don't worry, Lu Daoist, every cultivator has their secrets. In Rui County City, you already perceived that you were different from ordinary cultivators, certainly possessing fortunate secrets. So rest assured, you can swear on my Dao heart that I will absolutely not divulge anything about Lu Daoist to anyone." Xiao Xie, being a smart person and cultivating the supreme forgetful love technique, was enlightened in her Dao heart. Having said that, she promptly swore an oath, indicating she wouldn't mention this matter to a third party. "Xiao Daoist, there's no need for such formality, the situation isn't that serious." Lu Chongqing smiled, very satisfied with Xiao Xie's consideration. After all, revealing talisman treasures and cultivation levels like this was still somewhat risky. Chapter 292, 100,000 Spirit Stones, The Change in Xiao Xie. _4 Reading Omicron N Novel Cool. Omicron M, Lise had been considering how to hint to Xiao Xie, but to his surprise, she brought it up herself. If it hadn't been for Lu Daoist, Shiyu would have been in danger this time. Previously, Lu Daoist helped Shiyu with her cultivation, and now he has risked his life to save her. Although he used his trump card to slay the robber cultivator, he must have suffered great losses himself, leaving Shiyu at a loss for how to repay him. Xiao Xia's gaze fell slightly as she spoke softly. During the battle with the robber cultivator, an inexplicable emotion had emerged in her heart. At this moment, these feelings were rapidly taking root in her heart. She did not use the supreme forgetful love technique to suppress these emotions, letting them fill her heart instead. Xiao Daoist, you are being too formal. Given the situation at the time, it would have been difficult for Lu to abandon Xiao Daoist and leave. Lu Changsheng's eyebrows raised slightly as he noticed a change in Xiao Xia's expression. Having interacted with her for such a long time, he knew that Xiao Xia's cool and ethereal demeanor would only disappear when she was cultivating. Once she stopped cultivating, she would quickly return to her usual cold and aloof appearance. But at this moment, Xiao Xia looked completely different from usual. It reminded Lu Changsheng of the lively and genuine, bright and charming Xiao Xia from 10 years ago. Furthermore, he keenly sensed that Xiao Xia was now referring to herself as Shiyu. Obviously, she felt much closer to him. He knew that experiencing life and death together, and a hero saving a beauty were things that greatly increased affections. As the words fell, Xiao Xia's delicate and incomparably beautiful face, slightly pale, took the initiative to move closer. Lu Changsheng immediately felt a warm, fragrant sweetness pass between their lips. He could smell an indescribably fresh and fragrant body scent in his nostrils. Suddenly, the two were kissing each other. This time, the fairy was very proactive. It gave Lu Changsheng a taste of something different. A moment later, Lu Changsheng let go of the warm and fragrant soft jade in his arms. After all, it wasn't good to get worked up in the wilderness. And there was still one matter to take care of. That was, the red-robed youth was clearly targeting Xiao Xia, and it remained to be seen whether they had other tricks up their sleeve to cause trouble. Xiao Daoist, that robber cultivator clearly came after you. Under such circumstances, Lu Changsheng shared his thoughts. They must be targeting me, intending to use me against my master. Xiao Xia nodded her head with a deep look in her eyes, aware of this issue as well. There's no time to delay, Shiyu will go back and report this matter to the master. The matter of cultivation can only be set aside for now. I will return to Qingzhou Mountain to find Lu Daoist after I've dealt with this. Xiao Xia pursed her lips and spoke softly. She also knew that she was in a dangerous situation at the moment. Moreover, being with Lu Changsheng not only put herself in danger but could also involve him. The next time they encountered such an incident, they might not be so lucky. All right, do you need me to send you? Lu Changsheng nodded. He felt that with the support of a backer, one should naturally turn to that support in such situations. Shiyu can go back by herself. Lu Daoist, you must be preparing for foundation establishment, right? Xiao Xia asked. I still need to polish my skills for several more years before preparing for the foundation establishment. At this time, Lu Changsheng did not conceal too much. It had been less than a year since his breakthrough to the 9th level of energy refinement, and he needed several more years of cultivating his spiritual power before he could prepare for foundation establishment. All right, once Shiyu has dealt with the matter, I will return to assist Lu Lang with his foundation establishment. Xiao Xia smiled sweetly, her enchanting voice containing a hint of sweetness. After finishing her words, she kissed Lu Changsheng again. Chapter 293, The Master and Apprentice Arrive Together. _1, Suddenly So Proactive. Reading Omicron N novel cool. Omicron M, Lise watching Xiao Xia riding away on the immortal crane, with her clothes fluttering and full of immortal aura, Lu Changsheng touched his nose. He could still faintly smell the rich fragrance at his fingertips. He could clearly feel the change in Xiao Xia after she woke up from her fainting spell. Not only was her tone and demeanor no longer cold, but she also became much more proactive. This feeling was quite pleasant. Phew, I should head back too. This trip has also shown me the gap between chi refinement and foundation establishment. I need to reach foundation establishment as soon as possible. Otherwise, without a talisman treasure or treasure bones, if I encounter another foundation building great cultivator, it would be troublesome. Lu Chongqing exhaled a long breath and rubbed his still faintly aching sternum. That strike from the treasure bones meant he would need to recuperate for a while before he could fully recover. But what exactly did Xiao Xie mean when she said she would help me with foundation establishment? Lu Chongqing thought back to Xiao Xie offering to help him with his foundation establishment. But when he asked about it, Xiao Xie remained silent and mysteriously indicated it would be a surprise for him. Lu Chongqing speculated in his heart, could it be a foundation establishment elixir or perhaps some kind of secret technique that assists with foundation establishment? But I already have a foundation establishment elixir, and with my current situation, as long as I reach Qi refinement perfection, I have about a 90% chance of achieving foundation establishment. How else could she help? 99%. Lu Chongqing smacked his lips and didn't think further. After causing the cave to collapse and dealing with the scene, he rode the iron feather eagle and left. 2 days later, Lu Chongqing safely returned to Qingzhou Mountain. His wife Lu Miaoyun, Lu Miaohuan, and several other women asked him why he had stayed in the secular world for so long. Especially Lu Miaohuan, who was now about to give birth. Seeing that Lu Chongqing had not yet returned, she was so distressed that she needed a lot of comforting from him. He also explained why his trip took so long. After the gathering, a good friend was leaving the mountain to gain experience, but had nowhere to go, so he accompanied him for a while. Of course, he did not go into detail about how he provided the accompaniment. After all, discussing such matters of helping others in their cultivation with his wife felt a bit strange to Lu Chongqing. Especially since the second young mistress was about to give birth. Hearing this, Lu Miaohuan and Chu Zhenjin didn't think much of it. But Lu Miaoyun felt a strange sense of oddness when she heard that the Qingyun sect disciple who accompanied her husband was a woman. She always felt that her husband's popularity with women was a bit too good. Now, whenever she saw any woman with her husband, she couldn't help but suspect something might happen. However, she didn't say anything about it. She simply suggested that Lu Chongqing should cultivate a good relationship with Xiao Xie. After all, the cultivation world is also about personal connections and worldly wisdom. Being able to maintain a good relationship with an inner sect disciple of the Qingyun sect was also a good thing. Meanwhile, on the other side, Xiao Xie had also returned to the Qingyun sect. Senior Sister Xiao. Junior Sister Xiao. Senior Sister Shiyu. Along the way, many Qingyun sect disciples greeted Xiao Xie respectfully, paying respects or calling out to her. Xiao Xie was not only beautiful and talented, but she was also a disciple of the Peak Master of Kaiyun Peak, a nascent soul immortal. Thus, she had a wide reputation within the Qingyun sect. She was the goddess in many disciples' hearts and was well liked. However, Xiao Xie was also known for her aloof and cold demeanor. Many talented disciples of the Qingyun sect sought her, but all were met with rejection. Xiao Xie, with her cool and indifferent demeanor, was like the distant moon high above, unapproachable. But she still retained her previous habit of responding simply to others' greetings. This was another reason many disciples liked her. Xiao Xie did not delay much, and upon entering the Qingyun sect, she flew swiftly towards Kaiyun Peak on her Cloud Veil magic artifact. Arriving at the palace halls at the peak, she stood before a grand hall. Master. Xiao Xie paid her respects in front of the great hall. The doors opened with a bang. Shiyu, why have you returned? Has something happened? Yun Wanshang's voice arose. She knew that Xiao Xie's trip down the mountain for her cultivation experience was to experience the trial of love and to find an opportunity for a breakthrough. Thus, without anything major, she would not return so soon. But now Xiao Xie had come back so quickly, and with her aura somewhat disordered, it made her realize that something must have happened. Reporting to Master, Wuxia walked into the great hall and related the encounter with the youth in red. However, she chose to conceal specific details. She changed the account of killing into escaping. After all, Chi Refinement Cultivator's slaying of foundation building great cultivator was truly astonishing. Especially since the red-robed youth was not a regular foundation establishment cultivator, her master might even know him. Yun Wanshang's brow furrowed sharply as she listened, and a chill enveloped her heavenly features. She had suspected that someone was intentionally meddling when Wuxia had been attacked by Red Luan, the old demon, on her way back with the purple spirit liquid. Now that her disciple, Wuxia, had been targeted so soon after leaving for her cultivation experience, and the attacker was targeting Wuxia and Nu Yun Wanshang, it confirmed her suspicion that someone was targeting her from the shadows. This led her to believe that this person was very likely within the Qingyun sect itself. "Shiyu, don't worry, leave this matter to me to handle," said Yun Wanshang, suppressing the anger in her heart. "Yes, master," responded Wuxia with a nod. Then her mouth curved slightly as she said, "Master, I have found the opportunity for a breakthrough on this trip down the mountain." "What?" Yun Wanshang was taken aback, somewhat astonished. She hadn't expected that Wuxia would find her breakthrough opportunity just a little over a month since she had descended the mountain. She knew that the trial of the Supreme Forgetful Love technique was not easy to overcome. Especially since others who practiced this technique usually experienced the trial of love at the beginning, amidst the turmoil of the world, before they continued with their cultivation.